Chapter 669. On the first day of Chinese New Year, Yang Yi woke up feeling refreshed. Murphy's face was also rosy, as if it was coated with a layer of luster. Of course, she was the happiest. When she woke up early in the morning, she received a red packet from her father, which awakened her beautiful memories of Chinese New Year. The little girl did not even bother to wash her face. She giggled and ran to her mother's room in her slippers. She said to her mother, who was changing Tong Tong's diaper, "Congratulations." Obviously, she was also asking her mother for a red packet. She happily held the 2 red packets. She could not bear to put them in her pocket. She kicked off her slippers, climbed onto the bed, and waved the red packets in front of Tong Tong's eyes. "Hee little brother, I have a red packet. Do you want one?" Rather than saying that she wanted to share her red packet with her little brother, it was more accurate to say that she was showing off to her little brother that she had received a red packet. This red piece of paper was still a little attractive to Little Rascal. The little rascal didn't even blink as it stared at it closely. However, Little Rascal was busy eating its own fingers and didn't bother to make a sound to ask for it from its sister. Murphy looked at the siblings in amusement. After she finished showing off, she said, "Little brother also has a red packet. Look, it's all in his clothes." Today, Tong Tong was wearing new clothes like his father, mother, and sister. There was a cheeky zebra cartoon on it, and the teeth in the zebra's smile were actually big pockets. They could be stuffed into the pockets by unzipping them in the middle. Murphy opened Tong Tong's pockets and showed the 2 red packets to Shi. Obviously, Yang Yi and Murphy would not favor one over the other. Moreover, the red packets were actually just a symbol. They represented the parents' wishes for their children for the new year. Shi was a little surprised to see Tong Tong's red packet. After a while, Shi, who had just finished washing up, could not help but look at the big red packet on her brother's stomach. Tong Tong did not notice his sister peeping at him. He bit his pacifier and waved his hand happily. Perhaps he wanted to play with his sister. "Mom, I can help little brother get his red packet." Shi jumped down from the bed and moved step by step to her mother, who was arranging the milk powder and diapers in her small school bag. Murphy had already discovered Shishi's little action. She knew that this little girl was envious of her brother's red packet. At this moment, when she heard Shishi's words, she couldn't help but laugh. "Well, let your brother take his red packet. If you still want a red packet, ask Dad for it." After finally dispelling Shishi's idea of helping her brother keep his red packet, Murphy picked up Tong Tong and affectionately kissed him on the forehead. "Little guy, you don't even know what almost happened just now." When Sisi went downstairs, she saw her father talking to Xiao Guai and the others. The 3 British Shorthairs and the dog were standing in a row, as if they were being inspected. It was very interesting. The little girl forgot her purpose of coming again and joined in happily. Yang Yi felt that today was the new year. No matter what, he should give these 4 little family members red packets so that they could have a rich and happy new year. "Steamed Bun, bring your rice bowl over." Yang Yi patted Steamed Bun, who had already smelled the scent and was eagerly wagging his tail, and pointed at the rice bowl next to his nest. Steamed Bun was really smart. When the 3 British Shorthairs needed his master to personally deal with them, he immediately turned around and ran over after receiving the order. With his head in his mouth, he ran over with his personal rice bowl in his mouth. After putting it down, Steamed Bun raised a paw and put it on Yang Yi's foot. He wagged his tail fawningly, as if he was asking for praise. "Big master, look, I've done it obediently." "Well done." Yang Yi rubbed Steamed Bun's head and smiled as he put a few pieces of dried duck meat in Steamed Bun's bowl. Not only that, Yang Yi also opened the box and took out a piece of beef bone that was slightly longer than a palm. It was a big dried bone with some meat hanging on it. This was the reason why Steamed Bun was so excited. Seeing the big master take it out, Steamed Bun couldn't help but grab onto his trousers. He stood up, put his 2 front paws together, and shook his head up and down as if he was bowing. "Hee, Papa, Steamed Bun is also telling you to be happy and get rich." She thought it was very funny. Of course, this was something that Yang Yi had taught Steamed Bun before. He wasn't so smart that he could learn it on his own. The well-behaved Steamed Bun got what he wanted. He received the most sumptuous snack meal since he was born. Usually, Yang Yi was worried that he would be picky about food, so he didn't give him snacks often, let alone so many today. It was the three naughty cats' turn. They weren't interested in Steamed Bun's meat and bones at all. Even though Steamed Bun was holding the bones and chewing happily, they didn't even bother to look at him. However, they knew that there was going to be something delicious because they saw the bag of dried fish in their master's hand. Meow. Little Gray was the first one who couldn't sit still. He got up from the ground and walked around his rice bowl. From time to time he raised his head to look at the big master. He couldn't help but meow. Come, Shishi, you give each of them a handful of dried fish and a handful of these biscuits. Yang Yi smiled and let the excited little girl distribute the New Year's gifts to the three kittens. Guozi invited Yang Yi and the others to play in the city square, where the Spring Festival event was held. Around 9 o'clock in the morning, Yang Yi held Shishi's hand and took Murphy to the city square of Wuhu district. Sure enough, it was very lively. The spacious municipal square was now filled with colorful flags and people. Not only were there many people at the lantern riddles, but there were also many people in front of the game and food stalls that had been planned beforehand. Yang Yi and Murphy didn't deliberately dress up. Murphy only wore a cap, and together with her long hair, it covered her beautiful face. But even so, they walked in the middle of the crowd and weren't recognized. At this time, the people playing in the city square were either families or couples. Everyone was glowing, talking and laughing with their families and friends. They were going for the fun. How could they have the time to look at the passers-by? Besides, who would have thought that there would be celebrities coming to play in such a place? Normally, Yang Yi wouldn't feel at ease bringing Murphy and the children to a place with so many people. But it was the Spring Festival. Wasn't it supposed to enjoy a lively atmosphere during the Spring Festival? Guozi and Yang Yi met in front of the beverage shop. He handed Shishi the milk tea enthusiastically and said with a smile, "The lion and dragon dance will wait until 10:30. Let's go guess the lantern riddles first. At 10:15, I'll take you to find a good place to watch." However, after Shishi took the milk tea, she didn't rush to drink it. Instead, she hugged the milk tea and looked at Guozi with her bright eyes. She said, "Uncle Guo, congratulations." Guozi didn't seem to understand. He smiled and replied, "Congratulations. That's it?" After waiting for a while, Shishi couldn't help but pout. She couldn't help but say something. Guozi smiled and took out a red packet from his pocket. He handed it to Shishi and said, "Little ancestor, of course, Uncle Guo has already prepared this for you. Do you think I'll forget?" The little girl who took the red packet was beaming with joy. However, it wasn't over yet. She giggled and said, "But what about my brother?" "Haha, all right. Don't make things difficult for Uncle Guo." Yang Yi couldn't help but laugh. He was amused by his daughter's brain circuit. "That's a must," Guozi said exaggeratedly. He took out another red packet from his pocket like a magic trick. "But this red packet, is it for my brother? Or should I let you hold it for him? Give it to me. I'll hold it for my brother." Shishi was so happy that she couldn't close her mouth. She shook her little butt and said as if it was a matter of course. Unfortunately, her mother snatched her love away. Murphy stopped the little money grubber's hand and smiled. "That won't do. What belongs to my brother should belong to him." After fooling around for a while, they went to guess the lantern riddles. The lantern riddles were bustling, but the riddles that were easy to guess had already been guessed by others. Murphy held on to Tong Tong and looked at a few with interest. However, even after pondering for a long time, she still couldn't guess the riddle. "Yang Yi, come and take a look. This is a knowing smile. What's the word-y?" Murphy called Yang Yi over. "A knowing smile." Yang Yi pondered for a moment before he smiled. "It's the word DUI. "Why is it DUI? Murphy couldn't figure it out. Because the combination of the word DUI and you is the word you. It's a joyful smile, so it's called a knowing smile," Yang Yi explained. "Is that even possible? You're so good at guessing riddles?" Murphy looked at Yang Yi in shock. She refused to believe it and asked Yang Yi to guess another one. "What's the word have to show?" "That's simple," Yang Yi said confidently. "How is it simple? I've been thinking about it for a long time," Murphy said unhappily. "Have to show your head." If you take it apart, you'll get the word no. However, there's another no that shows its head. It's the word cup in the word cup. Yang Yi explained to Murphy. On the other side, Guozi also showed off his clever brain to Shishi. He guessed a few riddles one after another. For example, you have to use all your strength to scratch an itch. The answer to this riddle was to grasp the main point. Why is it to grasp the main point? Shishi still didn't understand. Of course, it was also her first time hearing the phrase grasp the main point. Because it says that you have to use all your strength to scratch an itch. Using all your strength means using all your strength. If you use all your strength, won't you scratch it hard? Guozi explained. Yes, yes. Shishi nodded. Scratching an itch is also scratching, so you have to scratch harder. Grasp the main point. Guozi spread out his hands and said casually. Hee all right. The little girl was still in a daze, but she felt that the way Uncle Xiaogua spoke was very funny. After a while, Yang Yi and Guozi actually managed to guess a thick stack of riddles. In the end, Guozi brought Shishi to the reception desk to exchange for the prize. This stack of riddles was enough for them to exchange for the grand prize, a 3-piece set on the bed. However, Shishi didn't want the grand prize. Instead, she wanted the third prize, a little rabbit that could walk on its own once it was wound up. Whatever the child wants, just give it to her. Guozi shrugged and said to the staff, who didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Seeing how wasteful this fellow was, the onlookers felt sorry for him. However, who asked Shishi to like it so much? Shishi really liked this wind-up rabbit. Even when Uncle Xiaogua brought them to a nearby shopping mall to find a place where they didn't have to squeeze with others to watch the lion and dragon dance. And that spectacular performance overwhelmed the little girl. She was still unwilling to let go of the rabbit. The spring festival is the most fun. After returning home, the little girl still couldn't forget about it. When she called her grandparents, she happily told them this. Chapter 670. Young Huan came back before the Spring Festival. Together with Guozi and Zhu Jie, she went to the airport to pick up the other 3 celebrity hosts under Mo Xiaozhuan's arrangement. The first episode of the Limit Challenge would be recorded in Rivertown, but before that, they would have 2 days to prepare. They would record the theme song that Yang Yi had written for the Limit Challenge in the Hua Yi Brothers and Phoebe Studios' small building. It was also a good opportunity for them to get to know each other. It had to be said that the 3 of them did not get along well at first. Yang Huan and Guozi were best friends, but Zhu Jie was somewhat ostracized by the 2 of them. After all, Yang Yi and Murphy were at loggerheads with Zhu Jie, as well as Tianmei Management Agency. Yang Huan and Guozi knew about it. It was inevitable that they would be hostile to Zhu Jie. Yang Yi thought about it, so he took the initiative to talk to Zhu Jie in the minivan. Zhu Jie, you're the most famous one among the 3 of you. Mr. Yuan and the others can recognize you. So you have to help Yang Huan and Xiaogua to get to know each other as soon as possible, Yang Yi said. Hee, that's a must. Brother Yang, don't worry. Yang Huan and Xiaogua are my younger brothers and sisters. If I don't take care of them, who will? Zhu Jie said with a smile. Zhu Jie was thrilled to be able to follow in the footsteps of his idol, Yang Yi. He was worried that Yang Yi would look down on him and cast him aside. Then, his fame would fade bit by bit, and he would eventually become a nobody. Zhu Jie had read the proposal for the Limit Challenge. With his experience in variety shows, Zhu Jie had no doubts about Yang Yi's words. The show would really be a hit. Therefore, he had to work hard and not be abandoned by his peers. However, young Master Jie was young Master Jie after all. He still thought highly of himself when he spoke in private. Guozi did not mind his tone, but Yang Huan was more straightforward, so he was annoyed. Who needs his care? I don't believe that the 3 teachers will look down on us just because we're not famous. Xiaogua and I will do our best to make them accept us, said Yang Huan. Zhu Jie also felt Yang Huan's hostility towards him. He was a little confused, but he had encountered this kind of situation many times when he was working on variety shows. At this moment he chuckled and said, that's right, that's right. Director Ren said that as the only female among the 6 hosts, Yang Huan's ability is not inferior to the other men's. She doesn't need the other men's care at all. Perhaps with my skinny arms and legs, I'll need your care. As he spoke, Zhu Jie really pulled up his sleeves, revealing a section of his arm. His skin was soft and tender, and even his biceps were limp. It made people wonder if this guy had the strength to truss a chicken. Guozi was deeply touched by Zhu Jie's words. Zhu Jie could not help but say, "Big brother Yang, Master Huan knows about it too. Don't be angry. Calm down." Guozi handed him a bottle of water. Yang Yi's tone softened and said, "Zhu Jie isn't angry with you because he's one of us. I personally invited him to participate in the show. However, Yuan Yan, Dan Hongkue, and Jie Yuchen are different. They're all celebrities who have been famous for a long time and have students all over the world. I don't know how many graduates of Shanghai Drama Academy have to greet Yuan Yan as a disciple. There's also the best actor and best actor. If you don't respect them, others will, even if they don't hold it against you. In fact, whether it's Teacher Yuan, Teacher Dan, or others, including Manager Yun, the two directors, the cameraman, and the crew, you should show respect for their hard work. You must always remember to be grateful because your success can't be separated from the support of these people behind the scenes." Yang Yi said a lot in one breath. Yang Huan was no longer angry and said softly, "I understand. I'll definitely respect everyone." "Alright then. Speak less and listen more today. Listen to everyone's arrangement and don't be careless. Learn more from Zhu Jie and Xiaogua." Yang Yi patted Yang Huan's shoulder and said in a gentle voice, "Figure out what you should do in the future." Yang Huan nodded softly. After alighting from the car, Zhu Jie, Guozi, and Yang Huan stood together while Yang Yi stood on the other side. He was surrounded by Yin Tao, Ren Min, Yin Yangfeng, and the rest. They were talking about something. "Your brother is really strict." Zhu Jie turned around and glanced at Yang Yi. Then he lowered his voice and muttered to Yang Huan. "Director Yin said that we mustn't rely on luck when recording the show. We must give it our all. Otherwise, we'll have to go back to where we came from. He was very strict. I thought Director Yin was fierce enough. I didn't expect him to be worse than your brother." "That's..." Yang Huan showed a hint of grievance. She pouted and said, "But it's good enough for me. You haven't seen how he beat up my second brother. He was so ruthless. My second brother was beaten into obedience by him." Zhu Jie shuddered, recalling the terrifying experience when Yang Yi had dragged him to the abandoned factory. "Actually, I've seen it too. I was ignorant back then and listened to my manager's nonsense. I kept pestering my aunt, saying that I wanted to create a scandal with Sister Murphy, because it was easier to become famous that way." Zhu Jie chuckled bitterly and revealed his shameful past. "I regretted it later and stopped before it was too late. Fortunately, Brother Yang forgave me." Zhu Jie was actually trying to get closer to Yang Huan and Guozi, so that they could exchange secrets with each other. Guozi and Yang Huan looked at Zhu Jie in surprise. They did not know about these details as Yang Yi had never told anyone about it. "What about your manager?" Guozi asked. "He ran away. The police couldn't find him." Zhu Jie did not want to talk about it in detail. He smiled and said, "Actually, I think that we don't need to worry too much. We just need to pay attention to what we say. I don't think Master Huan is like what your brother said. He just wants you to be good. When you see the three teachers later, your attitude will naturally become respectful." "Yeah, that's what I mean," Yang Huan said indignantly. "But let me tell you, maybe you haven't done variety shows before and don't know that some actions and words that are out of line during the show are allowed. Sometimes it's for the show's effect. Didn't Director Yin say that? We have to compete with all our strength. If we're timid in front of the seniors, the show will be boring," Zhu Jie said. "What if they get angry?" Guozi asked, confused. "That won't happen. Before we record the program, we have to inform them in advance. There might be some offensive actions during the program. After the program, we have to sincerely explain and apologize. These teachers are all veterans in the entertainment industry. They will understand." Zhu Jie smiled. "Understood." Guozi nodded. "We're about the same age. You can speak more casually." Zhu Jie smiled and said, "How tiring would it be if you talk like a junior? Just pay attention when you talk to the three teachers." Hearing Zhu Jie's words, Yang Huan relaxed and revealed a faint smile. How old are you, Jia? Guozi asked curiously. I'm 18 this year. Master Huan is 20. Zhu Jia had told Yang Huan and Guozi to call him Ajai when he introduced himself to them. Yang Huan glared at Guozi. How could he talk about a girl's age? I'm 25. But don't treat me like an old man. I'm still very young. Haha. Zhu Jia laughed. 25? Guozi said in surprise. Then you have to call him Brother Jia. I don't mind. After all, Master Huan is the oldest. Zhu Jia laughed. I'll kick the two of you to death. Yang Huan couldn't help but laugh. It seemed that the three of them were getting closer because they shared the same hatred for Yang Yi. Chapter 671. After a while, Yang Yi and the rest received Dan Hongkui, Yuan Yan, and Jie Yuchen. Actually, they were all familiar faces. Yuan Yan was a frequent guest on TV. Dan Hongkui had appeared in many movies, and Jie Yuchen was a professional. However, this was the first time Yang Huan, Guozi, Zhu Jia, and the others had come into contact with them. To their surprise, these old seniors, with high statuses, didn't put on airs. Dan Hongkui, who was the first to arrive, had a big smile on his face from beginning to end. Although his appearance was average, or rather slightly ugly, and his body was thin, which was a bit contrary to his name, he had a kind of confidence that made people not dare to underestimate him. I was called here by Yuan Yan. He said that this show is fun, so he dragged me here. But he's not here yet. Don't be so formal, you're making me feel embarrassed. Dan Hongkui was amused. No wonder he had acted in so many comedies, and his actions were humorous. When chatting with Dan Hongkui, although Yang Huan and the other two treated him very respectfully, they were unconsciously drawn closer by Dan Hongkui's friendliness and didn't feel estranged. Compared to Yuan Yan, Dan Hongkui was truly a good friend. When Yuan Yan arrived, he was naturally chatting and laughing. However, his gentleness made him unfathomable. When Yang Huan saw Yuan Yan, he felt like he was looking at his acting teacher. He was trembling with fear, as if he was afraid that he would be caught by the teacher if he was distracted. Yuan Yan was very interested in Guozi. After chatting with Guozi for a while, he smiled and said to Dan Hongkui, Old Dan, do you know? When I watched Fairy Tale, I felt that little Guo's acting was pretty good, but he's a little introverted and dull. Later on, Director Ren told me that little Guo wasn't introverted at all, but I didn't believe him. Although Yuan Yan called Dan Hongkui Old Dan, Dan Hongkui was actually a few years younger than Yuan Yan. It was just that Dan Hongkui, who was slightly uglier, looked older. Do you believe me now? Haha, little Guo is the talkative one. Did you make a mistake? Dan Hongkui joked. Guozi rubbed his nose awkwardly. Yang Huan was so scared that he didn't dare to speak. He couldn't help but blabber a lot under Yuan Yan's questions. Naturally, he was the one who spoke the most. It's good that you made a mistake. This means that little Guo's acting skills are pretty good. She even fooled me by pretending to be an introvert. Yuan Yan smiled. I heard that little Guo isn't a professional. Although she's also studying at Jiangqing Media University, she's not majoring in performing arts. No, I majored in electronic media. Guozi quickly replied. In front of Yuan Yan, he also felt a lot of pressure. After all, Yuan Yan was a teacher. Yang Yi added, Mr. Yuan, Xiao Guo also wanted to take the acting major, but he was rejected by Jiang Chuan. Maybe it's because of his size. In the end, he didn't give up on his dream of becoming an actor. He passed the college entrance examination and returned to Jiangqing Media University to continue working hard. That requires a lot of perseverance and courage. Yuan Yan looked at Guozi in surprise and encouraged. That's not bad. I feel that you have the potential. Continue to work hard. Where there's a will, there's a way. Mr. Yuan, please give him some pointers when you're free. Yang Yi smiled. Yuan Yan raised his eyebrows and looked at Yang Yi in surprise. He didn't expect that Yang Yi didn't mention his sister. Instead, he focused on helping Guozi. It seemed that this little fatty had a good relationship with Yang Yi. It's better to learn from old Dan than from me. Yuan Yan smiled and said, I'm also a professional. What I teach isn't suitable for little Guo's path. Little Gua's path is similar to old Dan's. He has to play every role well and perform the extraordinary in the ordinary. That's the key. TSK. Yuan Yan, you're setting a trap for me. Dan Hongkue smiled and pointed at Yuan Yan. However, he didn't agree or disagree. Instead, he changed the topic with a few words. Although these old foxes were chatting happily, they didn't like talking too much. If they wanted to gain their recognition, Guazi, Yang Huan, and the rest would have to continue working hard. Jie Yuchen, who was the same age as Yuan Yan, was the last to arrive. This man, who often acted as emperors and masters of big families, had a square face. He couldn't be considered handsome. If it was in the 60s or 70s, he would be more in line with the public's aesthetic standards. But if it was in the modern era, he might be a little tough and not handsome enough. But when he walked over from afar, he had a majestic aura. However, Yuan Yan and Dan Hongkue, who were more familiar with Jie Yuchen, looked at each other and smiled. Dan Hongkue even chuckled and said, "Old Jie is pretending again. There's something wrong with this person. He cares a lot about his image. If you can make him reveal his true colors in the show, the Limit Challenge will definitely be popular." Yuan Yan smiled and said to Yang Yi. Yang Yi smiled. "Our show pursues authenticity. We won't artificially arrange the roles that each of you has to play. In fact, in the continuous challenges, you can only use your true colors to deal with them. Otherwise, you might be exposed at any time. And we won't not film those scenes." Why did Dan Hongkue and the rest say that Jie Yuchen was pretending? Soon, Yang Yi and the rest saw that Jie Yuchen's cold expression was nowhere to be seen. He said with a smile, "Ju Jie, I know your songs are very interesting." "Teacher Jie, just call me Jie," Ju Jie said quickly. "Then don't call me teacher. Yuan Yan is the only teacher here." "Brother Yuchen." Ju Jie changed the way he addressed him. "That's right," Jie Yuchen said with a smile. "Among your songs, I think Impulsive Punishment is the most interesting. However, you have to be careful. If you keep singing these songs, you'll have a bad reputation among the girls." "Brother Yuchen, that's just what the lyrics say. I actually respect women very much," Ju Jie said with a bitter smile. "I'm just kidding. Haha, you're as handsome as me. Don't worry." Jie Yuchen patted Ju Jie's shoulder and said narcissistically, "That's enough, old Jie. Don't teach others bad things. These three are all children." Yuan Yan smiled. "Hey, don't underestimate children. Yuan Yan, you'll be at a disadvantage during the recording." Jie Yuchen turned his head and looked at the only female in the crowd other than Ren Lian, Yang Huan. "Sister, I heard from the director that you're very good at fighting. Is that true? Why don't you show us your skills?" Yang Yi didn't interfere with the conversation between the six of them. He just watched calmly from the side. Jie Yuchen was a natural socializer. He chatted with the three young people as if they were old friends who had not seen each other for years. Now he called Yang Huan's sister, in a more cordial tone. "Here." Yang Huan pointed at the parking lot of the airport in astonishment. They were about to get into the nanny van. "There's no one here and no reporters are following us. We're just having a few moves." Jie Yuchen turned into a joker and said with a smile. Yuan Yan and Dan Hongkue also looked over with interest. "Xiao Guo, come over here." Yang Huan had to call Guazi and ask him to stand in front of her. "How _old_are _me?" Guazi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He only wanted to say in his heart, "Why me again?" Yang Huan pressed on Guazi's shoulder and asked him to stand still. Then, she turned her back to Guazi. "What is she doing?" Jie Yuchen elbowed Dan Hongkue and asked curiously. How did Dan Hongkue know? However, in the blink of an eye, Yang Huan stomped her left foot on the ground, turned around and pulled out her right leg. She raised it high and lashed it at Guazi like a whip. Her posture was graceful and fierce. It was like a martial arts move in the movies. She was going to hit Guazi's cheek. Everyone exclaimed in surprise. Guazi was stunned. Was he touched? He didn't dare to move. Chapter 672. At that time, her foot was only 1 centimeter away from my throat. Guazi was scared out of his wits. He thought that Yang Huan was going to put him down like she did when they first met. Of course, Yang Huan did not have such good kung fu. Her foot slowed down when it was far away from Guizi, and finally stopped on Guizi's shoulder. However, the wind from her foot still made Guizi's hair stand on end. Wow! Dan Hongkui and Jie Yuchen could not help but exclaim. Zhu Jie was also dumbfounded by Yang Huan's vigorous figure and long legs. Although Yang Huan had a unique charm, Zhu Jie could only think of luck at this moment. Luckily, he did not provoke Yang Huan. Previously, he was only in awe of Yang Yi. He didn't want to flirt with Yang Huan just because she was tall and beautiful. However, now that he saw Yang Huan's valiant appearance, he couldn't bring himself to do so. Roses were beautiful, but they had thorns. Jie Yuchen waited until Yang Huan withdrew her foot, blushing. Then he clapped his hands and praised, "Amazing! Amazing! Sister, you can beat 3 of us by yourself. Don't drag me into this. Who wants to be old with you?" Dan Hongkui laughed. "Mr. Jie, of course, I will not use these skills in the recording," Yang Huan said embarrassedly. "No, you still need to show your skills occasionally. Yang Huan, the audience does not have a good impression of you. If you want to do well in the show, you have to be sure of your position." Yuan Yin hit the nail on the head. The more you are different from other women, the more you dare to challenge the male hosts and try your best to win. Only in this way will you leave a deep impression on the audience. Yang Huan was stunned. She understood and said gratefully, "Thank you, Mr. Yuan, for your guidance." After gathering, everyone discussed for a while, and decided to let their assistants go to the hotel to pack up first. Yuan Yen and the others followed the nanny van sent by Yang Yi, and went to Yang Yi's studio to visit and record songs. On the way they did not stop talking. Jie Yuchen was humorous when he was not acting cool. Dan Hongkui could talk about anything. Yuan Yen was a man of few words, but he could always say the right thing. In this atmosphere, Guizi and the others were not so reserved and started to talk. They soon arrived at the Phoebe studio. Of course, there were 2 signs hanging at the door: Huai Brothers Management Agency and Phoebe Studio. It was not hard to tell that Yang Yi's company. When they entered, they saw the hostess in casual clothes. Mo Fei was also playing in the studio today. She was a person who couldn't stay idle. Now that she was almost fully recovered, she gradually began to resume some of her work, such as recording songs. She wanted to record Fairy Town that she didn't record before, and Song of Pigs that she didn't know how to record, but she wanted to study the childlike singing style. There was also a recording studio at home, but Murphy still wanted to come to the studio with Yang Yi once in a while. Only by changing the environment could she maintain a happy mood. Of course, Murphy brought her children to the studio. How could there be so many rules in her own studio? She didn't have to avoid the media. She wasn't as secretive as Cece was back then. Everyone knew that she and Yang Yi had 2 children. Who could say anything when she openly brought her children to the studio to play? Even when recording songs, she sang with headphones while Tong Tong was lying in the cradle next to her. Wasn't this also a kind of music influence? Look at how happy the little guy was when he was listening to his mother sing. Maybe he was also very talented in music. Of course, when welcoming the guests, Murphy did not bring Tong Tong out. Instead, she asked Mo Shaowan to take care of him and left him in her studio. "Hello, Teacher Yuan, Teacher Shan, Teacher Jie. I've actually met Teacher Jie before." Murphy followed Yang Yi and greeted Yuan Yen and the others. However, when it came to Jie Yuchen, she turned around and smiled at Yang Yi. "Yes, the title song of Capital City that I acted in was sung by Murphy. We met in the crew at that time." Jie Yuchen remembered and was amused. He said, "This circle is not big, but it is not small either." At this moment, Yang Yi's ears twitched. He heard movement and turned his head to look. At the corner of the stairs in the hall, a small head and a big head peeked out. It was Shishi and Xiao Ai. The little girl was peeking. Murphy did not allow her to disturb her father's work, but how could Shishi stay in the recording studio? Shishi, who was curious about what her father and mother were doing, bypassed Mo Shaowan, who was playing with Tong Tong, and sneaked out. She met Auntie Xiao Ai in the corridor. Xiao Ai was a good-tempered person. After being pestered by Shishi for a while, Xiao Ai had no choice but to bring her down to take a peek. Cece's and her father's eyes met. The little girl cried out, "Aya," and hurriedly retracted her little head. However, she was not sure if her father had noticed her little movements. Just like at noon, when she did not want to sleep, she would pretend to half close her eyes. After a while, she poked her little head out again, and her black eyes rolled around. "Come here." Yang Yi smiled and waved at his daughter. Only then did Cece reveal a joyful smile and run to her father's side. "Hey, this little girl." Dan Hongkue was the first to notice and asked in surprise. "This is my daughter. I was worried about her being alone at home today, so I brought her along." Yang Yi smiled and explained to Dan Hongkue. Facing so many strangers, Shishi was a little embarrassed and squeezed into her father's arms. However, her big eyes were still looking at these uncles. "This is Shishi, right? I have read the Shishi's bedtime story that your father wrote for you." Yuan also smiled kindly at Shishi and then said to Yang Yi, "My daughter also likes the storybook you wrote." "Really? Teacher Yuan, you can bring her along next time. She can play with Shishi." Yang Yi patted Shishi's little head and smiled at Yuan. "Uncle Yuan's daughter is older than you. You have to call her sister in the future." Yang Yi saw his daughter looking at him curiously and smiled. After a while of small talk, they still had to get to the point. They came to Yang Yi's studio. In addition to the studio shared by Yang Yi and Murphy, it was the second studio with top equipment. However, it was a pity that none of the 6 people knew how to appreciate the equipment. Even Zhu Jie, who was a singer, could not tell the quality of the equipment. "Yang Yi, you don't often write songs for others. I saw that you have written songs for Chen Yijie, Murphy, and Guizi. It's rare to see a high-quality song. Those music companies outside must have racked their brains to invite you to write a song," Yuan said to Yang Yi. Before Yang Yi responded, he turned to Dan Hongkue and the others and smiled. "We have made a big profit this time. Other people can't ask Yang Yi to write a song for them. Yang Yi wrote a song for us to sing." The few of them laughed out loud. Only Zhu Jie's expression was a little strange. There were some words that could not be said. Dan Hongkue smiled and said, "Teacher Yuan's words made my heart itch. I really want to hear the song immediately." "It's not difficult. I will play the demo I recorded before and show it to you." Yang Yi sat in front of the console and turned on the equipment. The audio output was also switched from the monitoring headphones to the external sound system. Soon, the prelude of an electric guitar reverberated in everyone's eardrums. "How many times have I fallen on the road? How many times have I broken my wings?" As soon as Yang Yi's deep voice rang out, everyone present shuddered. It was also Yang Huan's first time listening to the song. She did not know why, but when she heard the first few lines, she felt hot blood fill her chest, as if there was a surge of energy gathering. That's right. The song that Yang Yi used for the Extreme Challenge was a representative song of half of the Chinese music industry in his previous life, Life in Bloom. This song was very popular in Yang Yi's previous life. Many people had sung it in high school, many had sung it during military training, and many had sung it when they were being brainwashed. Although it was about the same as Little Apple, it was the first time it appeared in this world. When Yuan, Dan Hongkue, and the others heard it, it was a good song that made their blood boil. Zhu Jie was even more in awe of it. "I want life in bloom, like flying in the vast sky, like walking in the boundless wilderness, with the power to conquer the world. I want life in bloom, like standing at the top of the rainbow, like walking in the bright galaxy, with the power to challenge the limit." Of course, to match the theme, Yang Yi changed the lyrics. He changed "break free of everything to conquer the world," and "transcend the ordinary to challenge the limit." These changes did not affect the beauty of the song. Yang Yi's high pitch, like the majestic context of the lyrics, made the theme of the Extreme Challenge sublime. Just like when Luffy said that he wanted to be a pirate, his dream was not to be a pirate, but to conquer the universe. Needless to say, this song was like a war song. Just by listening to it, everyone was filled with energy. They could not help but want to challenge the limit with the show. "This is so good. Old Dan Yuan, I think this song is going to be a hit," Jie Yuchen exclaimed exaggeratedly after listening to the song. Yang Huan asked curiously, "Is this song called Extreme Challenge?" "No, it's called Life in Bloom. Yang Yi smiled. He did not plan to change the name of the other songs. That's good. Do you want your life to be liberated? Do you want your life to reach the top of the rainbow? Come and challenge the limit. Yuan Yen grabbed the air and looked into the void with his bright eyes, as if there was a camera filming him. This caused everyone to laugh one after another. They didn't expect that Yuan Yen, who was usually so serious, could play such a trick. The problem now is who's going to sing this high pitch. I like to sing the first part, but I think I will break my voice at the end, Jie Yuchen said. It's simple. Xiao Jie can sing it. He can sing such a high-pitched song like Impulsive Punishment. Dan Hongkue smiled. Yeah. Jie Yuchen slapped his thigh. I don't think that's good. It's too domineering for me to sing so many parts alone, Zhu Jie said quickly. And Old Dan, don't forget that although Old Dan is an award-winning actor, he has also practiced singing. When he was down and out, he even sang in a bar, Yuan Yin said. Then let's add more people. Yang Huan, come and sing. Dan Hongkue looked at Yang Huan. I don't know how to sing, Yang Huan said embarrassedly. You can't say no. How do you know if you don't try? Xiaogua, come and give it a try. Dan Hongkue laughed and dragged the others into the water. It was better to have fun together than to have fun alone. Chapter 673. Yuan Yen, Dan Hongkue, and Jie Yuchen appeared in Rivertown. It was impossible for such obvious movements not to be discovered by the reporters. Even when they were picking them up at the airport, a large group of people appeared at the airport. The paparazzi who were waiting for them took photos. Zhu Jie and Guizi aside, Yuan Yen and the rest were A-list stars in the film industry, especially Dan Hongkue and Jie Yuchen. With their titles of Best Actor and Best Actor and Best Actor, it was rare for them to be in the same frame. It was hard not to guess that there was a big show that had invited these two famous actors at the same time. Of course, this was only the speculation of the first piece of news. When the news was released that night and spread on the internet, LVU, who was already a famous paparazzi, circled some of the key people in the photos on his Zhuozai 888 account. Yang Yi in a cap, Yin Yangfeng beside him, and the two directors, Run Lian and Yen Tao. Other than Yang Yi, who was a familiar face, Yin Yangfeng and the rest were only known by the industry insiders. However, they were all exposed by LVU. There's no big show. There's only one explanation for Yuan Yen, Dan Hongkue, and Jie Yuchen coming to River City. They're filming the Limit Challenge that has been circulating for a month. LVU revealed this secret that was about to become a secret, causing a commotion in the entertainment industry. No way. Was the Limit Challenge so amazing? It could invite so many famous stars? Many people who did not know the truth were interested, wanting to know what kind of show it was. Luo Jinting and Hu Xing only found out about the news the next afternoon. Because so many famous stars were gathered, the news had already become today's headlines. In the meeting room of Starlight Productions, the assistant helped them play a video of the press conference. As it turned out, Yin Yang no longer kept it a secret. Since the news had been exposed by the media, he decided to hold a press conference to announce that the Limit Challenge was currently being recorded and would premiere on Magic City TV station on the 26th of February. Hearing this confirmed news, Hu Sheng's face darkened. Manager Yin, did the Ultimate Challenge invite Yuan Yen, Dan Hongkue, Jie Yuchen, Yang Yi, Zhu Jie, and other celebrities to host? A reporter asked excitedly. Yes, the Limit Challenge will be hosted by 6 celebrities, excluding Mr. Yang Yi. Indeed, there will be Teacher Yuan Yen, Teacher Dan Hongkue, and Teacher Jie Yuchen. Zhu Jie is one of them as well. Please allow me to keep the other 2 in suspense. When the program is broadcasted, I will announce it to everyone, Yin Yang said with a glowing face in the video. Yin Yangfeng had also responded to some of the disputes instigated by Starlight Productions. The Limit Challenge and High Ability Challenge are 2 completely different programs. If they were the same, we wouldn't have been able to invite these teachers. Don't you think so? The reporters present chuckled. They knew that after a few episodes of High Ability Challenge had been broadcasted, it was now at the heart of the storm. Although Li Manman had a glib tongue, her poor hosting skills and her tendency to steal the limelight were gradually revealed. Don't think that editing could cover up everything. Lee Man-man's behavior had affected the rhythm of the competition. These were all minor details that had triggered the audience's dissatisfaction. The audience had even begun to criticize High Ability Challenge for inviting celebrities as hosts. If the Limit Challenge was the same as High Ability Challenge, then Yuan Yen and the rest who had accepted the invitation must have lost their minds. The reporters did not believe that these wily old foxes had such low intelligence. Director Yen Tao, how do you think the Limit Challenge is better than High Ability Challenge? A reporter slyly approached Yen Tao and asked a question with a hidden trap. Logically speaking, Yen Tao could have avoided this trap. However, Yen Tao wanted to do as he wished today. He said calmly, although they are two different programs and there's nothing to compare them, I think the advantage of the Limit Challenge is that it's more entertaining. You're quite arrogant. Luo Jinting knocked his cup heavily and snorted in a strange tone. Wu Xing felt a little uneasy. He had been Yen Tao's colleague for so many years and knew that Yen Tao had always been a calm person. Today he was so arrogant. Perhaps he had something to rely on. He thought that he might be mocked by his old colleagues, mocking him for throwing away his gold and jumping ship. But sometimes, people just didn't want to believe in some bad ideas. He still stubbornly thought that it was the same as what he had thought in the past. The Limit Challenge was plagiarized from High Ability Challenge. Manager Luo, can't the company take some action? Sue them for plagiarism and not let them broadcast it? Wu Sheng gritted his teeth and asked. Luo Jinting scratched his head. He felt that his boss had made a big mistake by inviting Wu Xing back. This guy only knew how to direct programs and was a complete mess in everything else. He said helplessly, Director Hu, where's the evidence? Where's the evidence to prove that they plagiarized? If there's no evidence, will the Copyright Association and the court care about you? Then we can only wait for them to broadcast before we sue them? Wu Xing asked unwillingly. And if they really plagiarized, it's okay to sue them until they go bankrupt. Luo Jinting and Wu Xing looked at each other, but they could see the worry in each other's eyes. The recording of Life in Full Bloom lasted for 2 days. Although it was still a little rough, it was enough to be used as the theme song of the program and broadcast on the TV station. On the night of the recording, everyone was arranged to stay in the new rooms of the hotel, where Yuan Yen and the others were originally staying. Yang Huan, Guo Ziyi, and Zhu Jie, the 3 guys who originally had a place to stay in Jiangcheng, were brought over by the program crew. Miraculously, Yuan Yen and the others were also called to new rooms by the program crew. During this time, their phones were confiscated, and they weren't allowed to interact with others. Has the recording started? Jie Yuchen walked around the program crew a few times, but he didn't see any cameras. The recording hasn't started yet, but the challenge has already begun. The executive director of the program crew, who was in charge of Jie Yuchen, explained. All right then. Jie Yuchen lay on the bed and smiled. You guys are making me feel like I'm in prison. I'm sorry, Teacher Jie. This is a requirement of the program, the executive director said carefully. It's okay, I'm just saying. Jie Yuchen waved his hand casually. Don't be nervous. By the way, is there anything else I need to pay attention to? Of course there was. The executive director said to Jie Yuchen. Teacher Jie, you should go to bed early tonight, because you'll be waking up early tomorrow. Then when you go to bed, it's best to dress neatly. Why did these requirements sound so strange? Jie Yuchen touched his chin and said, All right. I'll listen to your arrangements. Yang Yi didn't send Yang Huan to the hotel, but he was still worried. At night, when Yang Huan and Guo Ziyi's manager, Ding Xiang, called to report that they were safe, he was relieved. Why don't you go and take a look tomorrow? Murphy whispered to Yang Yi. Why should I go? I'm not the director, nor am I a guest. Yang Yi shook his head. Mo Fei smiled and said, Okay, stop pretending. I know you are worried. This is Huan's first time recording a show. And this is also the first time the show you designed has started filming. How can you not be there to keep an eye on it? Director Ren said that if you're not there, they won't be confident. Yang Yi glanced at Shi, who was watching cartoons, and Tong Tong, who was in Murphy's arms, and asked, Then I'll go to the studio. Can you take care of the 2 kids? Murphy smiled. It's okay. I'll ask Xiaowan to come and chat with me tomorrow. She can help. We can have lunch outside at a hotel. At night, you'll be back at night. Yang Yi was indeed a little worried. He wanted to follow the entire recording process of the first episode. Although he didn't know much about directing, he could give some suggestions if there were any problems. Besides, this was Yang Huan's first time recording a program, and it was a competition with a group of men. As her brother, Yang Yi was still worried even though he said that he wasn't worried. Chapter 674. At 4 o'clock in the morning, the night was still hazy. In the hotel, Yin Tao and a group of photographers who were carrying cameras or holding sports mini-cameras, as well as many staff members, were ready to go. Filming an outdoor variety show had always required a lot of manpower and material resources, but the requirements for the ultimate challenge were even higher. Not only was there an exclusive cameraman for each host, a backup cameraman, an exclusive executive director, and a bodyguard to take care of them, but there were also a large number of staff members in different scenes to ensure that the recording of the show could be carried out smoothly and without any omissions. Before this, all the cameramen had undergone physical training. China Star had even recruited a group of cameramen who were physically strong and could run fast. Quite a number of them had even been paparazzi. They had already had a meeting and rehearsal, so Yen Tao did not say anything. He waved his hand, and the group started to move. First, they went to Yang Huan's room. Although they had been warned beforehand, Yen Tao still asked a female assistant to go in first to make sure that Yang Huan, who was sleeping on the bed, was not naked. Then he went in with 2 cameramen. Although Yang Huan had been practicing martial arts since she was a child, she was not as alert as Yang Yi. The 4 of them crowded in her room, and the girl was still sleeping soundly, wrapped in the quilt. 4 o'clock in the morning was the time when people were sleeping soundly. Who would expect that someone would come to their room and play tricks? Yang Huan, Yang Huan. The female assistant bent down to wake Yang Huan up. This time, Yang Huan woke up very quickly. When she opened her eyes, she saw a large group of people and a few men behind the female assistant. In a daze, she forgot that she was supposed to film the show and screamed in fright. However, in the midst of her scream, a pillow was thrown at her. The pillow hit a cameraman's face. Although it was not lethal, it still made him panic. He almost lost his grip on the camera, and the lens kept shaking. Yin Tao explained to Yang Huan, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Yang Huan, who came back to her senses, hurriedly apologized to the cameraman she had just abused. 4 o'clock? So early? Yang Huan was dumbfounded, but she had to accept the fact. What you need to do now is to pick the next person you want to wake up. Yen Tao put the lottery box on Yang Huan's bed and waited for her to pick something. Then he said, "The room card." 1502. Yang Huan scratched his head and said in confusion, "There's only a room card and a number. I don't know who's staying there." However, Yen Tao did not answer her question. Instead, he did not waste any time and directly entered the lottery segment of the roulette wheel. You use a dart. Whichever one you hit, you have to use that method to wake him up. Using darts? Let me tell you, my throw is very accurate. Yang Huan said happily. She had tied her hair into a ponytail. Although it was just a casual ponytail, she looked much prettier than before. Moreover, Yang Huan's skin was very good. She didn't usually wear makeup. Now that she was barefaced, her face looked very smooth and her skin was very delicate. Is that so? Yen Tao smiled and motioned for the female assistant to spin the roulette. Yang Huan was dumbfounded. No matter how accurate she was, she wouldn't be able to hit anything. Director, there's no one like you. It's not easy for me to come across a project where I have an advantage. Can't you give me an advantage? Yang Huan's complaint inadvertently became a joke. However, Yin Tao was indifferent. Yang Huan had no choice but to shoot the dart. The dart hit the target steadily, and was not far from the center of the circle. When the female assistant pressed down on the roulette wheel, Yang Huan's method to wake up the next member came out. Spray water. Fortunately, compared to blowing wind and kissing, Yang Huan was more willing to accept it. Alright, let's do it. Yang Huan did not complain anymore. Instead, he waved his fists energetically, twisted his legs, and jumped from the bed to the ground. His movement was clean and neat, and it was very pleasing to the eye. It showed the vigorous side of Yang Huan. Although Yang Yi did not give Yang Huan too many instructions, he had privately taught her how to show more of her unique side in front of the camera, so that the audience would have a clear impression of her position. What? Director, are you still not satisfied? After Yang Huan got off the bed, she stretched her arms and looked at Yin Tao amusedly. Then she smiled at the camera. Let me tell you, the director must be regretting that I didn't hit the kissing and plucking option. After a few days of interaction, Yang Huan had become familiar with this middle-aged director. Moreover, they were filming a show, so she did not have to be too reserved when talking to him. Yin Tao shook his head helplessly. However, he could not talk too much with the members, as it would ruin the progress of the show. Soon, Yang Huan appeared at the door of room 1502. She opened the door with the room card. Who am I going to wake up? It would be best if it was Guozi, her best friend. However, it was completely random, and the probability of it being Guozi was only 1 in 5. Yang Huan thought to herself as she walked into the bedroom. However, the blanket on the bed was lifted, and there was no one on it. Suddenly, the door of the bathroom beside Yang Huan opened, and a person walked out. Ah! Yang Huan was startled. She jumped far away and saw that it was Dan Hongkue who had walked out. Dan Hongkue was shocked by Yang Huan's scream. However, when he saw Yang Huan and the director behind her, he quickly understood what had happened. What's wrong with you? Why did you come to my room so early in the morning? Dan Hongkue said in amusement. And Xiao Huan, you're so scary. Why are you scared instead? Yang Huan said embarrassedly. Mr. Dan, I thought you were sleeping. I didn't expect that you would suddenly appear beside me. It turned out that Dan Hongkue had gone to bed a little early last night. He was not very sleepy, and when he got up to go to the bathroom, he coincidentally missed Yang Huan and the others. Mr. Dan, I want to spray water to wake you up. Yang Huan rolled her eyes and looked at Yin Tao. But, Director, Mr. Dan is already awake. You don't need to spray water to wake him up, right? However, Yin Tao shook his head mercilessly. What are you doing? Dan Hongkue was confused. When he saw the staff bring the disc over, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Yang Huan took a bottle of water and said embarrassedly, Mr. Dan, come on. Dan Hongkue pretended to be ready to die. Hey, wait. Yang Huan was about to spray water. Dan Hongkue added, Don't tell me you haven't rinsed your mouth? Yes, I rinsed my mouth before I came out, Yang Huan said embarrassedly. After a while, Yang Huan really sprayed water all over Dan Hongkue's face. After that, she hurriedly handed Dan Hongkue a tissue and said, Mr. Dan, I'm really sorry. It's okay. It's the unscrupulous director's fault. Dan Hongkue took the tissue and wiped his face with it. Actually, there was nothing to be surprised about. A young and pretty girl sprayed water at him. This sounded a little weird. Anyway, it was not something to be upset about. However, Dan Hongkue soon stopped smiling. His dart hit a kiss. Obviously, the rest of the people who hadn't woken up yet were all grown men. Yang Huan didn't see Dan Hongkue's embarrassment. She followed her executive director and a few cameramen back to her room. She thought she needed to tidy up. However, 2 men wearing V for Vendetta masks suddenly rushed out and held her down. The masks were specially drawn by Yang Yi and made by the crew of the show. Yang Huan struggled, but she didn't use much strength. The executive director was worried that she would beat up the staff, so he told her in advance not to use force no matter what happened later. Of course, the reality was different from what was shown on the show. After filming the scene where Yang Huan was taken away, she was released. She hurriedly packed her things and left with the executive director. She wanted to have breakfast alone, then change into her combat uniform and equipment for the next segment. Finally, she was blindfolded and taken away. The battle for time was about to begin. Chapter 675. Yang Yi, of course, did not go there so early to see them spray water and kiss each other. He prepared breakfast for Murphy and Shishi at home, and heated it up in the pot. Finally, he left a note at the bedroom door and kissed Shishi, who was still asleep. Only then did he head to the coastal area leisurely. Today's The Ultimate Challenge was the most important part of the time chase segment. They would be filming in Haihong Square and the surrounding areas. Yang Yi arrived at around 7 o'clock. This segment had already started filming. He contacted Ren Ming and finally found the location of the majority of the team. "Where are we now?" Yang Yi asked curiously. "We haven't contacted any of the members yet." Ren Min and a few staff members in charge of communication were on the footbridge that spanned across Haihong Square. They could see further from the high ground. She handed Yang Yi a pair of binoculars and pointed in the direction of the park, telling Yang Yi where Yang Huan was. Yang Yi picked up the binoculars and found Yang Huan in a short while. It was too far to see her expression, but Yang Yi was relieved when he saw her and a few staff members asking passers-by for directions. "Is there anyone who is dumb enough not to open their suitcases?" Yang Yi asked with a smile. In his previous life, Sun Tzu and Wang Chong carried their suitcases for half a day without knowing what the mission was. That clumsiness was enough to make people laugh. Most of them have opened it. Only Zhu Jie did not open his suitcase, but I think he might have done it on purpose, Ren Min said to Yang Yi after some hesitation. Zhu Jie had indeed done it on purpose. In the car, he had handcuffed a suitcase and had to carry it when he got out of the car. Zhu Jie was not dumb. How could he not know that there was something wrong with the suitcase? But Zhu Jie had done many variety shows, so he knew how to make the show look the best. After the masked man left, he really counted down to 100. Of course, Guozi was as obedient as he was. Only Yang Huan, who was bored to death, and the 3 old foxes did not follow the rules and took off their masks. Did they forget to tell me what I should do? Zhu Jie carried his suitcase and looked at the garbage pile beside him. He was thrown to the entrance of a residential area. He didn't know whether to cry or laugh. This guy really decided to play dumb and not open the suitcase. I think we should find one of our members as soon as possible. The rules of the game should be that we each have a certain amount of information, but only by piecing it together can we form a complete clue. Zhu Jie muttered to the cameraman's camera, "But the question is, where are my brothers?" Zhu Jie couldn't just sit there and wait for death. He walked out of the neighborhood and asked the passers-by on the road. How could this work? Fortunately, after a while, Jie Yuchen called to ask for his location. The phone in the suitcase rang, and only then did Zhu Jie open the damn suitcase. "Sigh, I was wondering why we had to carry a box so early in the morning. Seriously, you kidnapped us all the way here, but you're not even willing to say a simple word." Zhu Jie opened the box and excitedly said, "Brother Jie Yuchen is the best. He still cares about me. Although he pulled my hair this morning, that's because the director is too evil. I don't blame Brother Yuchen." The guy confirmed the content of the mission, and that his target was Yang Huan while he was mumbling. "What? I have to defeat Yang Huan and steal her time?" Zhu Jie stared dumbfoundedly at this task card, and then said with a wry smile, "Big brother, this is a suicidal proposition. They want me to defeat Yang Huan and steal her time." After a while, Zhu Jie started to leave the neighborhood and go to Haihong Square. As he walked, he muttered to the cameraman, "Actually, the person I don't want to face the most is Yang Huan. The other 3 brothers are okay. Although they are more dignified, they are not strong enough to defeat us young people. But Yang Huan is different. Although she is a girl, she is very powerful. I've seen her split Mount Hua and control thunder and lightning." Actually, Zhu Jie didn't want to attack Yang Huan because his time button was on his chest. He subconsciously thought that Yang Huan's time button was on her chest as well. If that was the case, wouldn't he have to attack her chest to defeat Yang Huan? Of course, the crew thought that the male contestants wouldn't be able to do it, so they sewed the button on Yang Huan's clothes onto her arm. Zhu Jie didn't know that Yang Huan's button was changed, so he didn't dare to attack her chest. If Yang Yi found out, he would be beaten to death. Even if he wasn't beaten to death by Yang Yi, he would be kicked to death by Yang Huan. However, Zhu Jie couldn't tell the camera that. He could only describe Yang Huan's ferocious appearance to cover up his cowardice. This guy was getting more and more ridiculous. The cameraman was about to burst out laughing. Luckily, Zhu Jie stopped in time. He took out the map of the charging station and said, "So I decided to avoid them. This is Haihong Square in Jiang City. I know it. Although I'm not very familiar with it, it's not a problem to find it according to the map. I can go play games first to prolong my life. In the end, Zhu Jie hugged the cameraman affectionately and said, "Let's kill them." On the other hand, Yang Huan and Guozi ran into each other in the park. After a round of scheming against each other, and confirming that neither of them was the target of the other, the two of them finally settled down and decided to form an alliance. My target is Brother Dan Hongkue, and your target is Mr. Yuan. Yang Huan sighed. It's hard to make a move. Guozi nodded his head emotionally and said, Teacher Yuan is too powerful. His judgment is very sharp. I reckon that before I even get close to him, I will be discovered by him. There's another problem. We don't know who's chasing us, Yang Huan said in annoyance. Wait a minute, my target is Mr. Yuan, and your target is Brother Shan, right? Guozi caught a clue, and he turned to look at Yang Huan. Yes. Didn't I just say that? Yang Huan was confused. It was Brother Dan who woke me up this morning, and then I went to wake Mr. Yuan up. If I'm not wrong, the person you woke up should be Brother Dan. Guozi was indeed a top student. The early morning wake-up mission and the current pursuit mission, two seemingly unrelated matters, were actually connected by him. Yes. How do you know? Yang Huan asked in surprise. When we wake each other up, we can't stay in each other's room, right? Yang Huan didn't like to think too much. Yes, Lord Huan, Guozi said. In this case, it's obvious who's chasing us and who's chasing us. Mr. Yuan was chased by me, and Mr. Dan was chasing me. Then you chased Mr. Dan. So who's chasing you? I don't know. Yang Huan said. Guozi covered his forehead and said helplessly, Haven't you seen it clearly? Whoever we wake up will be our target, and whoever wakes us up will be the one who wakes us up. Yang Huan said angrily, I know what you said just now, but I really don't know who's chasing me, because I wasn't woken up by our members. It was the director who woke me up. Guozi scratched his head and said regretfully, That's a pity. If we knew who woke you up, we could figure out the whole chain, and know who we're chasing. Then we'll know who we can ally with. How do you figure it out? Yang Huan asked confusedly. She hadn't figured it out yet. Guozi continued to explain. Let me give you an example. Let's say Zhu Jie is the one chasing you. Then Jie Yuchen is the only one left. We put Brother Yuchen between Mr. Yuan and Zhu Jie. Then we can draw a circle in the chain. You chase Mr. Dan and he chases me. Then Mr. Yuan, Brother Yuchen, Zhu Jie, and finally you. With such a clear idea and the chain he described, the two executive directors following Guozi and Yang Huan couldn't help but look at each other. Is he that good? He got everything right. Guozi didn't know that he had accidentally hit the nail on the head. In fact, he chose Zhu Jie as an example because he thought it was impolite to mention Jie Yuchen. Yang Huan understood. She smiled and said, Then we should pay attention to Zhu Jie, and then form an alliance with Brother Yuchen, right? No, that's just an assumption. We don't know the order of Brother Yuchen and Zhu Jie. Guozi said. So we have to be careful of them. We can't form an alliance with anyone else. Then let's deal with our target first. Yang Huan clenched her fists. She felt that she had grasped information that others didn't know, so she said confidently. Chapter 676. Big sis, wake up. Big sis, don't sleep in. The sun is shining on your butt. I woke up really early. These calls woke Shishi up from her sweet sleep. Her long eyelashes fluttered gently, and after a while, her eyelids fluttered open like a peacock spreading its tail, revealing a pair of beautiful eyes that were still a little dazed. Daddy didn't wake her up today. Cece hadn't realized this yet. When she opened her eyes, she saw her smiling mother and Xiaowu, who was being hugged by her mother's waist and buttocks in front of her chest. Murphy hugged Tong Tong and pretended to be a little kid. She imitated her little brother's tone as he woke Shishi up. Tong Tong also looked curiously at his big sister who was sleeping on the bed. Since his mother was hugging him, he could see his big sister who was sleeping like a beauty. Mom, why is little brother here? When Shishi saw Tong Tong, she didn't want to sleep in anymore. The little girl wanted to play with her little brother, so she rubbed her eyes, propped herself up, and asked with a grumble. At this moment, Tong Tong seemed to have noticed that his big sister had woken up, and he started to babble. From his small mouth and waving hands, it was obvious that he was very happy, because little brother wants to wake big sister up. Big sis can't sleep in anymore. Murphy said with a smile. Hee hee, I'm going to get up. I'm not sleeping in. The little girl regained her energy and quickly climbed down from the bed. She looked at her little brother and smiled happily as she put on her clothes. Usually, her father would bring clothes over for Shishi to put on. He would even help her open her jacket, so that she could stuff her arms into it. However, today, Shishi didn't have time to wonder why her father didn't help her put on her clothes. She impatiently put on the jacket and stuffed it into her arms. She even skillfully zipped it up. Blurururu. After putting on her clothes, Cece came to her mother and tried to get closer to little mommy. She even made a face at her mother. Hee hee, big sister didn't sleep in. The little girl even started to talk to her little brother, regardless of whether he could understand her or not. Yaya. Tong Tong smiled happily. He stretched his little arms forward as if he wanted to touch his sister's face. Go wash your face and brush your teeth. Your papa has already made breakfast for us, Murphy said with a smile after watching Shishi play with Tong for a while. Where's papa? She noticed that her father didn't show up. He went to watch your aunt's show. Mo-Fei said, he won't be back until tonight. Hearing this, Cece immediately pouted and said sadly, Papa won't take me to play with you? Why won't Papa take me to play with you? Papa has to work, but Mommy is here to accompany you. Later, your Auntie Shawan will also come over. Let's see where to go then, okay? Murphy said. But I like to play with Papa. Shishi pursed her lips and said in an aggrieved manner. Yang would take Shishi to many interesting places, such as temple fairs, amusement parks, and so on. Those places had many interesting and new things. However, Murphy rarely took Shishi to fun places. In the past, when Murphy took Shishi alone, they went to the supermarket abroad. However, for the young Shishi at that time, those memories were not as clear and profound as the times when she played with her father. Although the little girl was young, she still had a sense of scale in her heart. Hearing her daughter's words, Murphy actually felt a little jealous in her heart. However, at this time, she had to appease Shishi, who was about to cry. She changed her strategy. But we can't disturb Papa's work. Your Auntie Shawan said that she had something to do and would come later. You are also a big sister. Shouldn't you help Mom take care of your brother? Murphy didn't lie to Shishi. Mo Shawan really had something to do and couldn't come early. She called before and said that Chun Yijie and several senior executives of Tianxiang Records would come to visit Phoebe's studio. Although they hadn't come yet, and the schedule was the day after tomorrow, Mo Shawan still had to make some arrangements for such a big occasion. Shishi was a very responsible girl. In the past, Yang Yi asked her to communicate more with Lu Weisha in kindergarten, and later she became Lu Weisha's best friend. Now that Murphy said so, the little girl was stunned. Although she still felt a little wronged, she finally nodded obediently. Shishi wanted to wash her face and brush her teeth by herself. Murphy held Tong Tong, and it was inconvenient for her to do so she could only give advice. In fact, Yang Yi usually didn't spoil Shishi and let her wash up by herself. However, Yang Yi would help Shishi squeeze the toothpaste. Shishi, who was squeezing toothpaste for the first time, imitated her father's posture, holding a toothbrush in one hand and toothpaste in the other. Then she squeezed the toothpaste with her small hand and put her mouth on the toothbrush. However, she didn't control her strength well enough and squeezed a large amount of toothpaste on the toothbrush. It's too much. It'll be very spicy. Murphy's eyelids twitched when she saw this. She quickly pointed out, shake it in the basin to get rid of the excess toothpaste. The rest is enough for you. After a while, Shishi and her mother went downstairs for breakfast after washing up. Yang Yi cooked delicious pumpkin and lean meat porridge for them. Murphy put Tong Tong in the cradle, washed the dishes and served the porridge. Although she said that she needed Shishi to help take care of Tong Tong, in fact, it was just an excuse to appease the little girl. Murphy still had to do everything. The porridge cooked by her father was naturally delicious. She ate happily. Her mouth was full of rice paste, but she didn't know how to wipe it. She turned her head happily and shook her small bowl to show off to her brother. Brother, do you want to eat porridge? It's super delicious. The little girl giggled. Tong Tong didn't know what was going on, but he felt inexplicably happy when his sister turned her head to talk to him and play with him. He began to squeal. Murphy couldn't help but rub Shishi's little head and say, "Okay, don't play tricks. Be careful not to fall the bowl." The little girl licked her lips that were a little uncomfortable from the paste with her pink tongue, but there was still a rippling smile in her big eyes. After a while, when Murphy was washing the dishes, Shishi circled around her brother's small cradle and turned to the kitchen. She said enthusiastically, "Mom, let me help you wash the dishes, okay?" "Thank you, but Mom doesn't need you to help her wash the dishes now. You help Mom look after your brother." Murphy didn't dare to let Shishi wash the dishes and pots. The little guy was still able to reach the basin. However, Shishi didn't stay quietly by her brother's side. She jumped around and played with her brother. Not long after, the little girl's nose twitched. After a while, Shishi ran to the kitchen and shouted excitedly, "Mom, Mom! Little brother pooped." Murphy followed Shishi out. The little girl said excitedly to her mother, "I smell it. It's a little stinky." Tong Tong was still lying in the small cradle like before. However, when the little guy saw Murphy, he anxiously made a sound, as if he wanted to be hugged by Murphy. Murphy scooped Lil P up and skillfully stroked Lil P's nappy-covered bottom. "Yes, he pooped. Mom is going upstairs to change his diaper," Murphy said. "I'll help Mom change little brother's diaper." The little girl excitedly followed behind her mother. Chapter 677. It was not easy to take care of two children. Although one of them could not speak and the other was more obedient, Murphy was not a superhuman. She carried Tong Tong upstairs and did not have the time to take care of her daughter, who had nothing to do and wanted to join in the fun. Shishi followed her mother all the way to the bedroom. She saw her mother put Tong Tong on the bed, and then turned to take a new diaper from the box next to her. She excitedly climbed onto the bed and sat next to her brother. Hee. Tong Tong looked at his sister, and unexpectedly did not care about the discomfort of his little butt. He let out an inaccurate laugh. Murphy had already returned. After she took off Tong Tong's pants, she spread out the new diaper and placed a soft towel on top of it. Then, she gently held the little guy's little feet with her left hand, and pressed the new diaper with her right hand. At the same time, she used the back of her hand to support Tong Tong's butt and slowly lifted his butt. Changing a diaper was a technical job. Yang Yi was clumsy at the beginning, but Murphy was experienced and did every step well. After cupping Lil P's buttocks, Murphy quickly pulled the new diaper and the towel in until the top of the new diaper was pressed against Lil P's waist. She curiously watched from the side. She thought it was very interesting to see her mother holding her brother's feet and lifting him upside down. Tong Tong's chin was pressed against his chest, but his eyes looked ignorant. It was as if he had accepted his fate and was at his mother's disposal. This posture was very interesting. Then Murphy opened the waistband of Tong Tong's old diaper and folded it to prevent it from sticking to Tong Tong's tender skin. Then she started to pull the front of the dirty diaper down from the front. "Hey, it stinks." She could not help but pinch her nose and say in a muffled voice, "It stinks. It's because your little brother pooped. Who allowed you to follow us?" Murphy said in amusement. "If you think it stinks, you can go downstairs and wait for me." However, she did not say anything. She seemed to have discovered something strange. She covered her mouth and nose and looked in surprise at the place where Tong Tong had just been unwrapped. She had never seen Tong Tong naked. Since it was winter when he was born, Yang Yi and Murphy paid attention to keeping Tong Tong warm. Usually Tong Tong wore thick clothes. Mo Fei had to quickly change the diaper for Mommy, so she had no time to pay attention to her daughter who was exploring a territory she had never seen before. Of course, he could not directly take out the dirty diaper now. So Murphy gently folded the dirty diaper together with the filth and temporarily pressed it under little Momo's butt. Then Murphy took baby wipes and wiped the little guy's butt. After wiping it, Tong Tong became clean again. However, the little guy's butt was not dry yet. The little guy's skin was too soft, and could not be repeatedly wiped. If it could be air-dried, it should be air-dried. Therefore his mother lifted his leg and raised his butt. It was a very shameful posture. She could finally see it clearly this time. It was not Tong Tong. Mom, what is little brother's butt? The curious little girl even wanted to stretch out her little hand to pull it. Murphy quickly stopped Shishi. It was too late for her to regret letting Shishi come over. She did not know whether to laugh or cry and said, "Do you remember what Papa taught you before? He said that boys and girls look different." The little girl nodded as if she understood. She remembered that her father had told her not to go to the washroom with the boys. Girls had to pee in the girls' washroom. But Yang Yi did not say it in detail. Mo Fei continued. Yes, as you can see, the places where boys and girls pee are different. However, because little brother is very young, I can show it to you. Usually you can't look at the places where boys pee. Do you understand? Shishi was more curious about other questions. She looked at her little brother's butt and asked, Mom, why do boys and girls pee in different places? Murphy was speechless. How did she know how to answer this question? She could not say that these two were like the concave and convex sides of building blocks, and that they grew in this way so that they could complement each other in the future. Because boys pee while standing, and girls pee while squatting. Murphy had to reverse the cause and effect and explain it this way. The little girl reluctantly accepted this explanation. However, this discovery made Shishi realize that there were two sides to the world. The little girl started to ask more questions. Murphy, who was taking off the dirty diaper and the towel, was about to put on the new diaper for Tong Tong. She had no idea what kind of curious baby she was about to face today. Back at the recording site of the show at Haihong Square, the competition on the pedestrian bridge had reached its climax. On one side of the bridge, the alliance of Yang Huan and Guizi was fighting against Dan Hongkue. On the other side, Yuan Yin and Jie Yuchen were scheming against each other. Of course, Zhu Jie was stuck in the middle. At the beginning, Jie Yuchen met Zhu Jie first. When he saw that Zhu Jie was playing games to make up time for himself, he gave up on the idea of getting rid of Zhu Jie. Playing games is too troublesome. Jie is good at playing games. He can help me make up time, and then I can steal his time. Jie Yuchen faced the camera and secretly told his plan to raise a pig. He did not forget to put on a cool front. Jie Yuchen, you didn't tell me who your target is on the phone just now. Jie Yuchen walked past Zhu Jie and pretended to be uninterested in him. Jie Yuchen's acting skills had completely fooled Zhu Jie. Zhu Jie didn't even need to act dumb. He thought that Jie Yuchen wasn't a threat, and that he was a heartwarming big brother. Hence he complained to him, Sai, I don't have a chance anyway. I have to eliminate Yang Huan. Brother Yuchen, do you think that's possible? Jie Yuchen, who was in the middle of acting, couldn't help but laugh at the bad news. Hehe, then you're doomed. I think you'll have to be beaten up by her before you have a chance to ask if it's possible. Zhu Jie was depressed. However, after a while, Jie Yuchen came over again. In order to follow his pig and not make him suspicious, Jie Yuchen said, How about this, Jie Yuchen? Let's form an alliance. Ah, my target is Yuan Yan. You might not know him well enough. He might look gentle, but he's actually a cunning old fox. I might not be able to deal with him alone. Jie Yuchen whispered. You help me deal with Yuan Yan, and I will help you deal with Yang Huan later. Brother Yuchen, can you defeat Yang Huan? Zhu Jie asked naively. Actually, Zhu Jie was also trying to hold back his laughter. He purposely teased Jie Yuchen for the effect of the show. Jie Yuchen was indeed choked. However, he was still an experienced old fox. He widened his eyes and tried to trick Su Tao. Can't we outsmart her if we can't defeat her? I will go there and ask Yang Huan to come over. Won't she listen to me? Zhu Jie was enlightened. Then I will go over and pin her down. Only then did Jie Yuchen nod his head in satisfaction. Then let's go to the building. Brother Yuchen, I saw Teacher Yuan in the shopping mall earlier. Zhu Jie said excitedly. Zhu Jie wasn't lying. He saw Yuan Yan on the upper floor of Haihong Shopping Mall. However, he didn't shout loudly because he was far away. Jie Yuchen wasn't going to look for Yuan Yan or Yang Huan. What he said earlier was just a trick. He only had eyes for Zhu Jie. No need. I'm not in a hurry. You can finish this mission first. Jie Yuchen wanted to raise a pig, but he didn't expect to kill it so soon. At this moment, Yuan Yan was on the upper floor of the shopping mall, watching everything that was happening on the bridge. Under the camera, Yuan Yan pushed his glasses up and spoke with confidence. Jie Yuchen is with Zhu Jie. Look at old Jie's eyes. He's staring straight at Zhu Jie. Based on my understanding of old Jie, he's definitely hiding something. So it basically proves that old Jie's target is Zhu Jie. Over here, Yang Huan and Guizi are together. These two kids don't have any ulterior motives. Look, they're not guarding against each other. It should be a simple alliance. However, I don't know who their target is. Excluding Jie Yuchen, because old Jie is my target. Basically, excluding Zhu Jie, it can only be me and old Dan. Yuan Yan's guess was flawless. His logical thinking ability was no weaker than Guizi's. Now, I can't get close to Yang Huan and Guizi. It's too dangerous. I can't let Jie Yuchen steal Zhu Jie's time. Because by then, Zhu Jie will become Jie Yuchen's puppet. If I chase after him, Zhu Jie will stop me. If I'm alone, I'll lose my advantage and be hunted down. It's best to strike first to gain the upper hand. Yuan Yan's glasses were shining like the sunglasses of a clairvoyant. He had already determined his target. Another amazing IQ. Yuan Yan and Guizi. These two men seemed to be able to see through the truth. Would they be the final entanglement of today's competition? An old fox and a young genius. Would there be two clairvoyants in this program? Or? Chapter 678. Yuan Yan made his move. He walked out of the Haihong shopping mall and stepped onto the pedestrian bridge. At this moment, the old fox Jie Yuchen was still cheering for Zhu Jie as he cleared the charging station game. In the camera, this guy was laughing behind Zhu Jie. Yes, as his plan to raise pigs was nearing success, Jie Yuchen did not care about acting cool in front of the camera. He first pointed at Zhu Jie and gestured with his hand on his neck. Then he smiled so widely that his eyes narrowed into slits, showing his overjoyed mood. Have you guys formed an alliance? Yuan Yan's voice was suddenly heard. Jie Yuchen and Zhu Jie both shuddered. The two of them looked over and saw the gentle old fox that Jie Yuchen was talking about. Zhu Jie was overjoyed as he winked at Jie Yuchen. Of course, as a variety show star, his actions were slightly exaggerated, as if he was afraid that everyone would not see it. Yuan Yan also saw it. Zhu Jie's expression made him wary, and he could not help but slow down his steps. Could it be that Zhu Jie's target is me? The program team is not playing by the rules? No matter how good he was at it, it was only a speculation. He had not confirmed the truth. Yuan Yan also doubted if he had made a mistake, so it was better to keep a safe distance. While Jie Yuchen was still thinking about how to fool around and find a place with fewer people to eat pigs, Yuan Yan smiled and asked, "Have you two formed an alliance?" Yes, not only did we form an alliance, but we also became sworn brothers. Xiao Jie is my younger brother today, Jie Yuchen said as he patted Zhu Jie's shoulder. This guy's hand was only a little away from Zhu Jie's button, but Zhu Jie believed it. He was overjoyed and shouted, "Brother, should we?" His voice stopped abruptly. Zhu Jie was also worried that he would alert the enemy. However, Jie Yuchen did not care at all, because his target was not Yuan Yan at all. Your target is not me, right? Yuan Yan asked. As he spoke, Yuan Yan used his wise eyes to look at the expressions of the two people in front of him. He could tell who was scheming and who was naive at a glance. Zhu Jie was afraid that he had said something wrong and hurriedly tried to salvage the situation. No, my target is Yang Huan. Brother Yuchen's target. Brother Yuchen's target is Xiaogua. Now Yuan Yan understood that Zhu Jie's target was not him. Zhu Jie had spoken so smoothly at the beginning, which meant that his target was really Yang Huan. However, the pause at the end meant that he was hesitating. Hesitation meant that he was lying. However, Yuan Yan was also relieved. If Zhu Jie's target was not him, then Jie Yuchen's target would not be him either, because his target was Jie Yuchen. Hee, this is interesting. My target is also little Gua old Xia. Did you lie to little Jia? Yuan Yin deliberately tried to sow discord. Of course, Yuan Yan's attempt to sow discord wasn't a big problem for Zhu Jia. He knew that he was just making things up. But why did Big Brother Yuchen drag it out for so long and still not make a move? How would I know? Maybe the production team set our goals to be the same, and let us compete for the same time, Jia Yuchen said. In fact, Jia Yuchen was a little panicked. He was worried that his real goal would be exposed by this old fox. His eyes kept flickering. Since our goals are not each other, then I am relieved. Yuan Yin quietly approached Jia Yuchen. However, at this time, Zhu Jie could not hold back anymore. He pounced on Yuan Yin with a face full of joy and grabbed his arm. Brother Yuchen, come and press down on Teacher Yuan. I caught him. Yuan Yin was shocked at first, but soon, he could not help but laugh out loud. This was because when Zhu Jie made his move, Jia Yuchen also moved nervously. It looked like he was rushing towards Yuan Yin, but his hand turned in midair and pressed on the button in front of Zhu Jie's chest. The red paint splashed out, and some of it even landed on Zhu Jie's chin. Zhu Jie was completely dumbfounded. What was going on? Jia Yuchen, this old scoundrel, did not forget to laugh proudly after pressing down on his brother, who he had just sworn an oath with. Shao Jia. Ha ha ha. Jia Yuchen was convulsing with laughter. He slapped his thigh and was speechless. No, Brother Yuchen, your target is Teacher Yuan. Why did you press down on me? Zhu Jie asked with grief and indignation. In fact, how could he not understand the truth now? Even if he had mistakenly believed Jia Yuchen in the beginning. Since he was playing dumb, he had to continue playing dumb. Yuan Yin shook his head and said to Zhu Jie with a smile. Don't you understand? He was lying to you. How could my goal be the same as his? At this time, Jia Yuchen also came over and hugged his little brother. He could not help but laugh. This child is too innocent. To be honest, I really could not bear to do it just now. Did you have any hesitation? Yuan Yin exposed him mercilessly, and even stretched out his hand to demonstrate. Shao Jie and I were pulling each other here. And your hand directly reached over and pressed on the child's body. After that, you were still secretly happy. Jia Yuchen was still in a state of complacency, when Yuan Yin demonstrated seriously again. When his hand reached over, Jia Yuchen was not prepared at all, and directly pressed down on Yuan Yan's hand. Poof! Red paint splashed out again. At this time, Jia Yuchen was also dumbfounded. Yuan Yin seemed to have completed a grand performance. With a gorgeous turn, he took off the non-existent hat from his head with his painted hand and bowed to the camera like a gentleman, with a fox-like smile on his face. No, you pressed on me. Yuan Yin, you old fox. Jia Yuchen saw this scene and also reacted. He cried out in grief and indignation. Ha 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 ha, this is called the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. At this time, Zhu Jie was also hugging the mascot of the Sahara Online Mall, a cartoon dog Pillow, and laughing. This guy was back to his old business, working hard to insert advertisements for advertisers. The final winner of this half of the battlefield was born, perfectly demonstrating the old saying that the older the ginger, the spicier it was. On the other side, the battle between Yang Huan and Guazi against Dan Hongkue was still a little intense. No, let's talk. Dan Hongkue panted and waved his hand to stop Yang Huan, who was chasing him relentlessly. Behind him, Guazi, who was panting even harder, had already fallen behind. Yang Huan was only panting slightly. Her cheeks were flushed from running too fast, which made her delicate face even more charming. A woman who exercised had a unique kind of beauty. Talk about what? Yang Huan asked, puzzled. In terms of speed, Dan Hongkue was a man after all. He could guarantee that he would not be caught in a short period of time. However, in terms of endurance, Dan Hongkue could not compare to the young and energetic Yang Huan. Therefore, he could only outsmart her and not fight her head-on. Let's go to Shaogua and have a talk. The three of us don't have to fight to the death for this little bit of time, right? Dan Hongkue said, rolling his eyes. Yang Huan vigilantly covered the button on her arm with her hand and said, don't you have any bad ideas? Dan Hongkue looked at Yang Huan's actions, and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Why are you covering your button? My target is not you. I can't even press your button. That's right. Yang Huan breathed a sigh of relief. However, she still kept a certain distance from Dan Hongkui. Everyone returned to Guozi's side. Comrade Guo was still paralyzed. After chasing for a while, he was almost out of breath. I really need to lose weight. He breathed heavily and mumbled to the camera. Have you finished off Brother Dan? Guozi asked curiously when he saw Yang Huan and Dan Hongkui return. Not yet. Brother Dan said he had something to discuss with us, Yang Huan said. Guozi did not suspect anything. He was so tired that he could not think straight. Dan Hongkui did not have anything to say. He was just looking for an excuse to buy time for himself to turn the tables. He rolled his eyes and said, Xiao Guo, I want to know why you formed an alliance with Xiao Huan. Is it because you are afraid of her? She is just a girl. How could he admit that he was afraid of Yang Huan? Guozi stammered. No, Sister Huan and I met first, and then we formed an alliance. That is to say, if I met you first, we would have formed an alliance too, right? Dan Hongkui was very close to Guozi. Guozi did not notice the danger, but his mind was still clear. He said, No, your target is me. If I met you, I would have been caught by you. In the blink of an eye, Dan Hongkui abruptly leaped forward, reaching out to press Guozi down. This was his chance. If he got rid of Guozi, someone would help him stop Yang Huan, and he could take the opportunity to escape. Chapter 679. He really was the best actor. Dan Hongkui had stealthily approached Guozi, pretending that almost no one had noticed his intentions. It wasn't until he was within a dangerous distance that Guozi subconsciously felt uneasy. When he lowered his head to glance at Dan Hongkui's hand, Dan Hongkui rushed forward. He was about to succeed, but a chubby hand blocked his way. Wah! Guozi was frightened by Dan Hongkui's sudden attack. He hurriedly covered his chest. His best chance was gone. Dan Hongkui unwillingly tangled with Guozi. At this moment, Yang Huan was still in a daze. How did the two of them end up hugging each other? Xiao Guo, please grant me my wish. Sacrifice yourself to achieve the greater good. Dan Hongkui was neither fat nor skinny. He was neither tall nor short, but it was obviously difficult for him to carry a fatty who was already 177 meters tall. Guozi also lacked the spirit to fight. Now he only remembered to protect his buttons. He curled up in Dan Hongkui's arms, and even used his chin to press on Dan Hongkui's hand. Brother Dan. Huff. Brother Dan, you're too cunning. Guozi was still panting. His brain couldn't function properly. If you let me press it, we'll both succeed. If you don't let me press it, the result will be the same. Dan Hongkui's mind was clear. He even talked about the pros and cons to Guozi. But at this moment, Guozi didn't have the time to think calmly. After all, the little genius wasn't a real fox. He struggled nervously, bent his legs, and rolled on the ground with Dan Hongkui. He was really going all out. It was just filming a show. The two of them rolled around on the pedestrian bridge that was usually used by many people. They didn't even care if they dirtied their clothes. Some passers-by who were stopped by the security guards not far away saw this scene and burst into laughter. At first, Dan Hongkui was still half joking about this variety show, but now he was also infected by Guozi's enthusiasm. He laughed as he also joined in the fun. He continued to pry Guozi's hand open on his chest, looking for the button. Sister Huan, come and help me. Hurry up. Guozi struggled. In fact, he was very tired. He felt that he was running out of energy, so he used his last bit of strength to shout. Yang Huan finally came back to her senses. She quickly bent down and reached out to press the button on Dan Hongkui's chest. Dan Hongkui didn't give up. He pressed his chest tightly against Guozi's back. The two of them seemed to be doing something immoral. They rolled on the ground, and Yang Huan couldn't even reach her hand in. Brother Dan. Yang Huan laughed until she ran out of energy. Why are you so stubborn? Dan Hongkui ignored Yang Huan. He was still trying his best to persuade his target. Xiao Guo, you have no chance. Even if I'm pressed down by Yang Huan, you'll still fail. Why don't you come with me? Xiaoguo, don't listen to his nonsense. I will succeed soon. Yang Huan's right hand had already reached in, but it was sandwiched between Dan Hongkuei's chest and Guozi's back. Guozi was in a state of hypoxia. He panted and protected his button, unable to think. The battle between the three of them had reached its climax. However, Yuan Yan was a perfect example of the saying, "The mantis stalks the cicada," unaware of the oriole behind. A few minutes ago, Yuan Yan, who had finished his own battle, hid behind a charging station with his two puppets and peeked at the battle. Seeing that Yang Huan had joined the battle, Yuan Yan, the old fox, couldn't hide his surprise. He raised his eyebrows and said to the camera cheerfully, "This is my best chance. Look, Yang Huan's button is on her arm. I only need to press her button when they are not paying attention. Then, we will have one more general in our team, a real general. Old Dan and Xiaoguo will be ours." When Yuan Yan said that Yang Huan was a general, he couldn't help but look at Jie Yuchen and Zhu Jie. He wanted to say something, but he didn't know what to say. Jie Yuchen and Zhu Jie, the two idiots who shared the same rotten tastes, had completely become salted fish after their failure. Not only did they not have the consciousness to be puppets, but they were also watching the show with great interest. They even began to explain one sentence after another. Nice. Player Dan's sneak attack has thrown the alliance into chaos. Player Gua is not afraid at all. He fell to the ground perfectly and held Player Dan back. Yes, the situation has changed again. Player Dan is in danger, and Player Yang has joined the battle. But Player Dan hasn't given up. He's still struggling. We have to call for Player Dan's spirit of never giving up. Obviously, Jie Yuchen had watched Soldiers Assault, which was still a popular TV series. We found that our master, Player Yuan, has also joined the battle. He is using the cameraman to cover himself. What is he going to do? Zhu Jie continued. The old fox is going to sneak attack again. Jie Yuchen shook his head with a smile. He and Zhu Jie were having so much fun that they had no intention of joining the battle. Yuan Yan did not intend to ask for their help either. He was going to launch a sneak attack, and the more people there were, the easier it would be to expose himself. Yuan Yan was approaching. Suddenly, he rushed out from behind the cameraman. His big hand reached for Yang Huan's arm. Unfortunately, Yang Huan was not Jie Yuchen. Her reaction was not as fast as Yang Yi's, but she was slightly faster. When she heard the commotion, she turned around and saw Yuan Yan rushing towards her. Her face turned pale with fright. Yang Huan instinctively fell to the ground and rolled. However, she was not a pushover. Instead, she used the opportunity to pull out her arm and roll to avoid Yuan Yan's attack. Then she got up beautifully. "Mr. Yuan, your target is me." Yang Huan understood. "Sorry, Xiao Huan. The victory is mine this time." Yuan Yan rushed towards her before she could regain her footing. Yuan Yan had underestimated Yang Huan. When she saw Yuan Yan's hand, she did not dodge. Instead, she went up and grabbed Yuan Yan's right wrist. In the blink of an eye, before Yuan Yan could react, she had already captured him. Moreover, she had locked both of his hands behind his back. At this moment, Yang Huan's explosive strength was shocking. Perhaps the audience would understand why Zhu Jie and the rest had repeatedly said that a girl like Yang Huan was not easy to deal with. After all, Yuan Yan was in his 40s and did not know much martial arts. Although he looked like he was in his 30s or 40s, his reaction and strength were much weaker than when he was in his prime. Although Yuan Yan was caught, he did not struggle. Instead, he said calmly, "Xiao Huan, you can't hold me down because I'm not the one you're chasing." Is that so? Yang Huan was prepared to deal with Yuan Yan first. She turned her head to look at her executive director, who nodded his head in response. "Then Mr. Yuan, I'm sorry. I have no choice but to offend you." Yang Huan looked around and grabbed a spare earpiece from the cameraman beside her. She learned from Guo Debao's method of tying her up with a belt, and tied Yuan Yan's hands behind his back, so that he could not deal with her for the time being. Although the cord of the earpiece could be broken easily, Yuan Yan would not be able to break free from it if it was tied up a few times. Furthermore, Yang Huan had his hands behind his back, so it would be difficult for him to exert force. It's useless for you to do this. Let me tell you, I have a helper. Yuan Yin smiled calmly. However, when Yuan Yin turned around, he was so angry that he could not help but laugh. His two puppets were still watching the show happily from the charging station far away. Yang Huan left him and rushed towards Dan Hongkui and Guizi, who were still rolling on the ground. Yuan Yin could only shout helplessly, "Come and help me. You are my people. You have to listen to my orders." Before Jie Yuchen and Zhu Jie came up, Yang Huan quickly knelt beside Dan Hongkui and put her palms together. She said apologetically, Sorry, brother Dan. It's been hard on you." She used her most shameless skill, tickling. Yang Huan scratched Dan Hongkui's waist. Ouch. Dan Hongkui could not help but shrink back and laugh. "Xiao Huan, you are too mean." While Dan Hongkui was not able to defend himself, Yang Huan reached out and pressed Dan Hongkui's button. I won. Yang Huan wiped the red paint on her hands and jumped up in surprise as if she had won the game. At this time, Dan Hongkui also accepted his fate and shook his head, releasing Guizi. He was also very tired, lying on the ground and gasping for breath. Guizi could finally relax. He let go of Dan Hongkui and lay beside him dizzily. He was even more tired and did not even have the strength to speak. He really needed to lose weight. "Brother Dan, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry." Yang Huan came back to herself and helped Dan Hongkui up. She also patted the dust off his clothes and kept apologizing. "It's okay. I'm yours now. Hurry up and press Xiaogui down," Dan Hongkui said with a wry smile. He had failed miserably. He and Old Fox had lost to a young man. However, Yang Huan still did not understand. She asked in confusion, "Why? My target is you, brother Dan. Because you pressed down on me, my target became your target." Dan Hongkui became Yang Huan's counselor and explained helplessly, "If you press Guizi down, our target would become Yuan Yin. In this way, we can fight back." Yang Huan understood. Yuan Yin, of course, also thought of this. He did not want to turn from the hunter to the prey. He quickly turned around and ran to his two puppets. He had to untie Yang Huan quickly, because he was the only one who could press Yang Huan. In an instant, the alliance between Yang Huan and Guizi collapsed. Guizi, who was lying on the ground, finally had time to think about this problem. No wonder Dan Hongkui said that he should not have helped Yang Huan. Sigh, he was so tired. Why didn't he think of this? It turned out that this was not a simple game of the food chain where the big fish ate the small fish, and the small fish ate the small shrimp. This was a gluttonous snake. After eating one, it could eat another. After all, he was still too young. Guizi's intelligence was still on the surface. A fortune teller should not only have intelligence but also rich experience. The young genius still had a long way to go to become a fortune teller. However, Guizi lost the game because he did not have the strength to struggle again. Yang Huan pressed the button on his chest apologetically. 3v3. As if it was a script, the director waved his hand. A mysterious person walked up and stopped the game. Chapter 680. Yang Yi was about to leave when he saw that the first phase of the time pursuit had ended. He had been hiding in a place that none of the members could see since the beginning. Even before the first member stepped onto the bridge, he had already shifted his position. Yang Yi was only an outsider in this episode. He could not interfere or affect the members' performance. When Yang Yi saw that Yang Huan could gradually adapt to the recording rhythm and perform well beyond everyone's expectations, he was relieved. However, before he left, Yin Yangfeng called out to Yang Yi. Although the operations department did not have any filming tasks, they were not idle either. They had come up with some publicity plans these days, and Yin Yangfeng wanted to report to Yang Yi. The main thing is still the marketing accounts on micro-broadcasting. We need an additional sum of funds to get these accounts to help with some marketing campaigns. Yin Yangfeng told Yang Yi in a coffee shop on the first floor of Haihong Building. During the Spring Festival Gala, Weibo repeatedly appeared in front of people. The number of registrations and daily activity of this social media application had reached a new peak. People were also paying more and more attention to the competition in the field of Weibo advertising. Those marketing accounts with a large number of fans were really earning a lot of money this time. And Weibo's homepage advertisements were the hot steamed buns in the eyes of many big brands. It was worth mentioning that after the launch of the VIP service in January, Backwave Technology Company had made its first profit in addition to the income from advertising slots. Of course, there was no need to discuss this in detail. Yin Yangfeng did not know about this at all. He was still thinking that since they could not afford the advertising slots on microbroadcasting's homepage, they could look for cheaper marketing accounts to promote themselves. Yang Yi looked at Yin Yangfeng with a smile and said, "You guys are professionals in terms of publicity operations. Do whatever you think is feasible. I will support you. Microbroadcasting will cooperate with you as well." Yin Yangfeng was stunned. He was still pondering the meaning of Yang Yi's last sentence. Was microbroadcasting referring to Yang Yi's private microbroadcasting? Yang Yi smiled mysteriously and said, "Don't worry. Microbroadcasting is one of us." Yang Yi didn't expect things to go so smoothly. When he got home, he was able to make it in time for Murphy and the others' lunch. Of course, there was no time to cook. Everyone packed up and went to the hotel to eat. When it was time for Murphy and Mo Shawan to tidy up, Shishi, who was not yet a delicate girl, did not need to tidy up or dress up. She was sticking to her father. The little girl stood on the sofa and rubbed against her father's arm. She hung on her father's neck like a bag and giggled. "Papa, I thought you wouldn't come back today." For others, a day without seeing each other felt like 3 years, but for her, it was only half a day, and she already missed him. "What did you do at home this morning? Mom said you helped her a lot," Yang Yi asked with a smile. "No, Mom doesn't want me to help her with many things. She just wants me to look after my brother." The little girl pouted and said to her father, "But I did help Mom get some clothes for my brother. I was the one who got the clothes he's wearing now." When the little girl said this, she became happy again. She slid down from her father's lap and ran to Tong Tong, who was lying in the cradle. She pointed at Tong Tong's one-piece crocodile baby clothes and asked for praise. "It's okay. When you grow up, you'll be able to help Mom even more." Yang Yi encouraged the little girl and even gave her a thumbs up. "Dad thinks you're already doing very well." The hotel that Yang Yi and the others went to was the clubhouse that he used to frequent with Lance Hao Kai. It was also a project developed by Lance Hao Kai's real estate company. The expenses were higher, so most people wouldn't come, so the privacy was good. During the meal, Mo Shawan told Yang Yi that the people from Tianxiang would be visiting in 2 days. "Eason is coming? That's a good thing." Yang Yi laughed. "Who else is coming? Maoli should be coming too, right? Is Lin Mu and coming as well?" "Lin Muan isn't here. He just debuted not long ago, so Tianxiang arranged some programs for him. There's also a radio program. It's an important time for him to accumulate fame, so he didn't come along," Mo Shawan said. Now that Lin Mu and was part of Tianxiang, Yang Yi and Mo Shawan couldn't ask too much. However, Yang Yi also understood from Lin Mu, and that Tianxiang valued him a lot and gave him a lot of resources. Compared to the other newcomers, the amount of training they put into him was much greater. This obviously wasn't something that Yang Yi's relationship could influence. Lin Mu, Anne's unique singing voice was indeed worthy of Tianxiang's training. Other than Director Mao, President who is also on the list. Then Secretary Yi, who contacted me, said that President whose father will also be coming back. Mo Shawan knew some things. She was so serious because she wanted to talk about it. "The old man will also come back?" Yang Yi was a little surprised. "But it's also true. He went to Harbor City for almost 2 years. It's normal for him to come back and take a look." "Are you talking about Hu Songnan's grandpa who?" Murphy asked curiously. Yang Yi also told her the story of the small building in the coffee shop. Yang Yi had also been in contact with Hu Songnan. Not only did they visit during the holidays, but Yang Yi would also call to ask about him every once in a while. When he was in trouble, he helped him a lot. To him, Grandpa who was as close as his own elder. Now Yang Yi could listen in at Jiangchuan because of Hu Songnan's help. With a deeper understanding of classical music, he and Hu Songnan had more topics to talk about. Yang Yi nodded to Murphy and said, In that case, you can arrange for the others. I'll receive the old man. No need. Secretary Yi said that they have booked the hotel. We don't have to worry about it, Emo Shawan said. Yang Yi smiled and said, I'm not talking about that. I have to clean up the small building in the coffee shop for the old man. Maybe he wants to go back and stay for 2 days. But Huan Huan and Ding Xiang live upstairs, don't they? Murphy asked, puzzled. That's not a problem. Huan Huan will go back to the villa first. As for Ding Xiang, she will go to Shanghai with Xiaogua tomorrow. Xiaogua has to rush to film, so it may be a while before she can come back. Yang Yi said with a smile. Putting this matter aside for now, Yang Yi's family ate. They didn't talk about work, but they chatted and laughed about some interesting things. During this time, Yang Yi got up to go to the toilet. After he came back, Shi, who was sitting next to him, asked curiously, Papa, did you pee standing up? Yang Yi was drinking water, and the little girl's words almost made Yang Yi choke. Why do you ask this question? Yang Yi asked, puzzled. Because I saw my little brother pee in a different place from me today, she said excitedly to her father. Then Mom said that my little brother looks different from me because no boys pee in different places. It's because boys pee standing up, and girls pee while squatting. Yang Yi looked at Murphy. Murphy was embarrassed and amused at the same time. Her face was red from holding it in. When she saw Yang Yi's gaze, she lowered her head, covered her mouth, and snickered, as if she had done something bad. Emo Shawan also covered her mouth and snickered. Murphy had already told her about this embarrassing matter. Ahem, this matter. Yang Yi shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. How should he respond to his daughter? Chapter 681. It was really awkward to talk about this, especially in front of his sister-in-law. Yang Yi looked at Shishi's curious big eyes and said helplessly, Of course Dad is like a boy, because Dad is also a boy. But. Shishi still wanted to say something. Okay. Yang Yi rubbed the little girl's head and didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he said, If you have any questions, let's talk about it when we're home. It's dinner time now, so don't talk about this. Okay. Shishi said regretfully. She still wanted to continue. It seemed like there was still a chance to talk about this topic. It wasn't easy to appease Shishi, but the faint awkwardness lingered in the hotel room. After lunch, Emo Shawan excused herself and left early. Anyway, Yang Yi was back, so she didn't need to accompany Murphy anymore. At noon, after Shishi went to bed, Yang Yi went to the bedroom next door. Murphy was lying on her side on the bed, softly humming a song to coax Tong Tong, who was a little noisy and still wanted to play, to sleep. The little fellow looked quite adorable when he was asleep. He placed one hand on his stomach and the other on his side. Then, he turned his little face in the direction of his mother. His pursed little lips were slightly raised. Perhaps he was very happy when he fell asleep while listening to the music. Seeing that Tong Tong had fallen asleep, Murphy breathed a sigh of relief. She carried the little guy to the crib, and then lay down beside Yang Yi with peace of mind. I didn't know that Shishi would be so curious about Mommy's nipples. Murphy pulled Yang Yi's hand over, so that she could snuggle in his arms. Then, she looked at Yang Yi's side profile and asked, Do you think I should find a chance to talk to her about this? Today, Emo Shawan came over to accompany her. The two sisters watched TV together, chatted and of course, took care of the children. Shishi was fine. She was playing house with her dolls, so Murphy didn't have to worry about her. Tong Tong was the same. He hadn't reached the stage where he could crawl and explore the world yet. Murphy held him in her arms or put him in a small cradle. The little guy could stare at the little stars hanging on the cradle for a long time. Ever since Murphy got married, the two sisters didn't have time to sit down and have a good chat. This time, Murphy didn't ask about Emo Xiaojuan's marriage. It was useless to force her, so she could only leave it to fate. The two of them were just like before, watching the people on TV and discussing. They either talked about the dressing of some female stars or studied which male stars were more handsome. These girls' topics were often talked about when they were young. Now that they were talking about it jokingly, it was like reliving the memories of those girls. Emo Xiaojuan's taste was slightly different from Murphy's. She preferred good-looking men. Obviously, good-looking men had some feminine elements on top of handsome. But not only good-looking, but also mature and gentle enough. Those little boys can't do it. I can't stand their silly looks. Emo Shawan said. She also commented on Murphy's taste. Sister, your taste is not good. I'm not saying that brother-in-law is not good. He is very good, mature and gentle enough to you, but he's not good-looking. He's not even handsome enough. Of course, it's meaningless to say this now. You're already his woman. Although Emo Shawan was joking, Murphy was very dissatisfied with Emo Xiaochuan's evaluation. In her opinion, Yang Yi was very handsome, very handsome. In the past she didn't think so. But ever since Yang Yi's personality changed, he was no longer as slovenly as before. His hair was shaved neatly, his beard was shaved clean, and his taste in clothes improved. Murphy gradually felt that Yang Yi was very handsome. It was not that beauty was in the eye of the beholder, but that Emo Fei really felt that Yang Yi was in line with her aesthetic standards. And the more she looked at him, the more she liked him. Now looking at Yang Yi's chiseled side profile and his eyes that were as deep as the starry sky, Missouri Fei felt her heart ripple a little. How could a man like this not be handsome? Of course, Yang Yi didn't know about the whispers between Murphy and Emo Shawan. He was thinking about what Murphy said. I don't think there's a need to go through so much trouble to talk to Shishi about these issues, Yang Yi said to Murphy. But those little cards you made in the past for me to talk to Shishi about sex education were very effective, right? Murphy asked, puzzled. Why don't you continue to talk to Shishi? She's so curious, so we should satisfy her curiosity and prevent her from exploring on her own. Yang Yi gently shook his head and said, the nature of these two is different. Shishi is at the age where gender awareness is budding, so she's very curious about these things. But as parents, what we should do for a child in such a situation is appropriate education and guidance. In other words, Shishi needs to know that there are differences between men and women, but she doesn't need to know too much to avoid arousing her curiosity. For example, we can tell her that men and women are different. Men have to go to the men's restroom, and women have to go to the women's restroom. When they go to the restroom, they can't let others see them. But there's no need to tell her that it's not good to be seen by others and what those bad people will do. Or we can tell her that men and women can't kiss. But there's no need to tell her that she's so young and doesn't know anything. If she kisses a man, she'll be taken advantage of. I understand. These adult thoughts don't need to be instilled into a child so early. Murphy suddenly understood. Right, including the differences between men and women, and the specific use of those differences. We don't need to tell her right now. Yang Yi smiled. Then what should we do? How should we guide Shishi's curiosity according to what you said? Murphy asked, puzzled. I'll talk to her about this later. Yang Yi pondered and said. In the afternoon, Yang Yi found time to take out a few printed pictures and sat in front of Shishi. Today Mom told Dad that you're very curious about why your brother looks different from you, right? Yang Yi said softly to Shishi, who was playing with her toys. Yes, yes. The little girl suddenly became spirited and stopped what she was doing with her hands. Her eyes were filled with concentration as she said to her father, Mom said that it's different when you go to the restroom. Well, Mom is right, but not completely right. Yang Yi smiled and said, Dad will tell you a fairy tale. Of course it may be true, but it may also be false. A long time ago, there was an immortal called Niwa. Yang Yi was talking about the story of Niwa creating humans. However, this story was modified by Yang Yi. Men and women looked different when they were kneading the clay. You've played with plasticine before, and the things you need are somewhat difficult to control. Even if you want to knead two identical little pigs, they still look different, right? Shishi nodded in confusion. That's right. That's why when Niwa used the magical clay to mold people, the shape of the people would be different. That's why there's a difference between a boy and a girl. It's very normal, Yang Yi said. Look, what are these two pictures? Yang Yi took out two pictures and asked Shishi with a smile. Lion. Hee Papa, I know lions. When the little girl answered the questions that she knew, she smiled widely and gradually forgot her initial curiosity. Yes, what's the difference between these two lions? Yang Yi said. The one with big hair is a boy lion, and the one without hair is a girl lion. Shishi put down her toys and went to her father's side. She looked at her father's hand and said happily. Yang Yi used to tell her these things when he looked at the picture album, and the little girl had a good memory. What about this? Yang Yi took out the pictures of 2 kangaroos. What's the difference between these two? The baby sitting in the belly is kangaroo mom, and this is kangaroo papa. Shishi could tell the difference. Before Lu Weisha sent the pictures, Yang Yi told her that the one with a pouch was a female kangaroo, and the one without a pouch was a male kangaroo. Is that right? So lions and kangaroos have their own differences, and so do humans. It's just that we have wisdom. In addition to these physical differences, we can also tell whether they are boys or girls from their clothes and hair. At least most of them can be clearly distinguished. Yang Yi summarized to Shishi. The differences in organs were led to the differences in general aspects. It was a macro explanation, but it also seemed to be very reasonable. Shishi understood and said with a smile, boys have short hair, and girls have long hair. This is not certain, but it's basically the same. It doesn't matter, you can observe other people's faces more in the future, and you can also see some differences. Yang Yi smiled and rubbed the little girl's head and said, if you have anything you don't understand in the future, you can ask Papa, okay? Yes, yes. The little girl finally nodded with satisfaction. Chapter 682. According to the original plan, Guozi would go to Shanghai to shoot Fat Agent, right after the Spring Festival holiday. However, Mo Shaowan had helped him to communicate with the crew, and asked the director to allow Guozi to spare 2 or 3 days to shoot the show. After the director knew about the cast of the Limit Challenge, of course he agreed wholeheartedly. If his actor went to shoot such a show and became popular, having such a popular actor as the protagonist of his movie would definitely be better than tens or millions of dollars of advertising. Although he had the director's permission, Guozi had a strong sense of responsibility. On the night of the show's recording, he took the nanny van arranged by the company and went to Shanghai. The next day he appeared on the set. The shooting of Fat Agent was not easy. Guozi had a lot of fighting moves, and he needed to learn from Wu Xing. Although the director did not arrange any shooting tasks for him, Guozi was also very tired from practicing with Wu Xing's brother, such as holding a gun and swinging a gun. At noon, several supporting actors, who had already shot several movies, ran over excitedly with their mobile phones. They pointed to some photos exposed by the micro-broadcasting client, Zhuozai 888, and said to Guozi, Xiaogua, in these photos, are you the one who shot the Limit Challenge? The extremely selective shooting was done outdoors, especially during the time chase. There were still many people around Haihong Building early in the morning. In addition to the protection of the celebrity host, the program team did not stop the passers-by from watching and taking photos of the celebrities with their mobile phones. Therefore, it was normal for some photos to be leaked. Louis Yu of Zhuozai 888 had sorted out the photos of the onlookers and exposed the extremely selective shooting. Yes. Guozi scratched his head embarrassedly and said, why are you still following the gossip blogger? Hey, let's not talk about this. Xiaogua, when you were shooting the show, did you meet teacher Yuan Yan and teacher Jie Yuchen? An actress asked with a little excitement. They are both my idols. Guozi had to nod. He was a little speechless in the face of this crazy fan. Tell me about them. The actress came over and held Guozi's hand. Well, how should I put it? Guozi pulled his hand out and quietly put some distance between them. He scratched his head and said awkwardly, they're all nice people. The news of Guozi's filming gradually spread. Originally, the director wanted to keep it a secret for the time being, but now everyone in the crew knew that Guozi had filmed a show with many famous stars. There was an endless stream of visits to him in the afternoon. You're here to talk to me, but you're not talking about me. You're beating around the bush to get teacher Yuan and the others' contact details. So annoying. When Guozi returned home that night, he saw Ding Xiang in the house that the company had temporarily rented for him and Ding Xiang. He immediately ran over to Ding Xiang to complain like a wronged baby. Ding Xiang smiled as she listened to his words. Then, she took out the food from the pot and ate dinner with him. Sister Ding Xiang, you don't have to cook for me the night after tomorrow. The director said that I have a night scene the day after tomorrow. I guess I'll be eating boxed lunches in the crew. Guo said as he dug into the food. Tisk tsk. My sister Ding Xiang's cooking is still the best. Sister Ding Xiang, you learned from Brother Yang, right? You're so good. I learned from him. You said that you're going to shoot a night scene. Do you want me to cook and bring it to you? The boxed lunches from the crew should be cold by now, right? Ding Xiang said with concern. No, everyone is eating boxed lunches. I can't be special, even though I'm the lead. Guo grinned. He seemed to be very proud of his identity as the lead. However, Sister Ding Xiang, if you can prepare some supper for me, like 7 or 8 roasted chicken legs or something, I won't feel tired at all after shooting. Ding Xiang pursed her lips and held back her laughter. She resisted the urge to knock him on the head and said, In your dreams? Roasted chicken legs? You can't eat supper now. Who told me last night that he couldn't win the TV show and had to lose weight? Guo lowered his head and muttered in a low voice. I can lose weight later. It's very hard for me to shoot night scenes. Hurry up and eat. After eating, we'll rest for 2 hours. I'll take you to the nearby park for a run, and then we'll come back to take a shower and rest. Ding Xiang said with a smile as she picked up a large amount of vegetables for Guo. Run again? Little comrade Guo let out a cry. After the new year, the Springfield kindergarten started again. Early in the morning, Shishi, who was wearing new clothes and carrying a school bag, walked into the kindergarten with her father. Not only Shishi, but the whole kindergarten was full of children chattering like little swallows. It was very lively. Daddy has to go. Bye Shishi. Yang Yi smiled and said goodbye to the little girls who saw their friends and couldn't stay by his side. Bye Papa. Shishi hugged her father's neck and kissed him on the cheek. Then, she happily turned around and ran to her friends. Today was the first day of school. Teacher Mu was still the same as before. He was not in a hurry to teach the new content. Instead, he chatted with the children and asked them to tell him what they did during the new year. At this time, the children were all talkative and happy to tell their own stories. Therefore, the classroom was as lively as a pot of hot oil that was sprinkled with water. Well, how about this? Children who want to talk, raise your hand. I'll call your name. Children who are called, stand up and talk, okay? Teacher Mu said with a smile. Okay. I want to talk, I want to talk. Many hands were raised in unison. Teacher Mu called the name of a child first. Of course, it didn't matter who came first. Teacher Mu would still give all the children a chance to talk. Of course, even if the child who was called stood up to talk, the other children would not obediently sit in their seats and listen quietly. They would quarrel and make noise. For example, no one knew which one it was. When it was Shishi's turn to speak, the little girl excitedly told Teacher Mu that she would stay in Jiangqing to play during the new year. Papa and I went to see lions. Everyone was dancing lions. It was super nice. There were also dragons. Xiao xiao xiao. Then there were uncles who played drums. Many people watched. Shishi said in her clear and pleasant voice. I thought it was a real lion. Chen Shiyun laughed loudly at the side. I went to see it too. The naughtiest of them all, Wang Shijuan, even jumped up from his seat, opened his arms, tilted his head, and whined like an airplane. No one knew what he was doing, but did he need a reason to be naughty? Ms. Mu was already used to it. She walked over gently, and asked Wang Shijuan to sit down. Well, thank you very much, Cici, for sharing her story with us. Next is Lu Weisha. This is your first time celebrating the Chinese New Year. Do you have anything new to share with us? Lu Weisha did not fully understand Teacher Mu's words, but she still understood the general idea. She said happily, My father and I went to Australia to play. You went to Australia to play? Then did you see the most interesting animals in Australia, such as kangaroos, koalas? Teacher Mu asked with a smile. However, Lu Weisha did not understand the Chinese word for kangaroo, but the English name for koala was similar. She said in confusion, I saw koala. What is a dumb tree? Hee kangaroo. She could not sit still. She giggled and said, Lu Weisha also saw kangaroos. I saw it. Lu Weisha took pictures with kangaroos. The little girl was very active. She raised her hand high. Without waiting for the teacher to call her, she excitedly continued. Teacher, Lu Weisha sent me a letter. There are pictures of her and kangaroos, and many beautiful pictures. Nan Zhaoyu heard and felt isolated. He said sadly, Lu Weisha did not send me a letter. However, he was not alone. After Yang Luoqi heard, she pouted and muttered, she didn't send me a picture either. Lu Weisha, why didn't you send it to me? You're not my good friend anymore. Chen Shiyin and Lan Xian were both jealous and began to complain. Lu Weisha was happily talking about her fun things in Australia. She did not expect the situation to take a turn for the worse. What happened to her friends? What did they want? The little girl was confused. She was also a little dumbfounded. She did not know that her words had caused some jealousy. She only felt that her friends were suddenly angry with Lu Weisha for no reason. What should I do? Chapter 683. Why didn't she send a letter to the other kids? Lu Weisha couldn't remember. Maybe it was because she and her father passed by the post office next to the hotel, and her father suddenly asked her if she wanted to send a letter. So she sent a letter with her father's help. Why did she send it to Shishi? Shishi was her best friend, or maybe it was because her father only had Shishi's address at that time, and he remembered it when he visited Shishi's house to visit Tong Tong. The reason wasn't clear, but wasn't it just a letter? Why were the kids so agitated? It was as if something delicious had been snatched away. Especially Lan Xian and Chen Shiyin. The two loud girls were shouting one after another, and their emotions were stirred up by each other. I didn't. Lu Weisha stuttered. She was so agitated that she didn't know how to explain herself in Chinese. Fortunately, Teacher Mu was there. She understood the conflict between the girls, so she asked Teacher Kai to continue teaching the children. She called out Lu Weisha, Shishi, Yang Luoqi, Nan Zhaoyu, and the others. Okay, it's just a letter. It's no big deal. It's okay if you don't have one. If it was someone else, they might coax the children like this. However, Teacher Mu didn't. She smiled and said to Nan Zhaoyu, Zhaoyu, you're the only man here. Tell me, why were you unhappy just now? Nan Zhaoyu straightened his thin and weak chest. Feeling a sense of responsibility, he said clearly, because Lu Weisha didn't give us the letter. She only gave it to Cici. That's right. The other children chimed in. It's not a letter, it's a photo. Chen Shiyin disagreed. The photo is in the letter. I put it in. Lu Weisha raised her hand and whispered to Teacher Mu. The foreign girl was a little flustered now. She didn't know what to do and could only rely on Teacher Mu for help. Mr. Mu smiled and said, I know. It's possible because it was sent from a very, very far away country. Only she received Lu Weisha's letter and photo. You didn't receive it, right? She slightly reversed the order of the words, but also mixed up the concepts. The children felt that it was a little strange, but it didn't seem to be a problem, so they nodded one by one. It was even more impossible for Lu Weisha to hear anything wrong. The little girl nodded in confusion and said, very, very far away. Shishi tugged at Mr. Mu's hand. What's wrong? Shishi, do you have something to say? Mr. Mu asked curiously. Shishi nodded and said seriously. My papa said that we have to take a long flight from here to Australia. It will take us from morning to night. It turned out that she was so serious about this matter, because she wanted to explain it to everyone. Before Mr. Mu, who didn't know whether to laugh or cry, could speak, the other children who were attracted by her words all started talking at once. I've never been on a plane before. Nan Zhaoyu said enviously. I've been on one before. It was rare for Yang Luoqi to be so active. The little girl raised her hand and reported happily. I've been on a plane with my father. We'll be home soon. She should be talking about her hometown. I often take planes. Lan Xian also said. Okay. In this case, you also understand that it's possible that you won't receive something sent from so far away. So, don't blame Lu Weisha, okay? Don't be angry. She's also very sad. Mr. Mu didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he walked to Lu Weisha's side, put his hand on her shoulder, and said gently. Lu Weisha lowered her head and said sadly, I'm sorry. However, to Mr. Mu's surprise, the children looked at Lu Weisha's appearance and started talking again. The first to speak was Chen Shiyun, who had shouted the loudest just now. The cheerful boxing girl shouted. I'm not blaming Lu Weisha. I forgive Lu Weisha. She apologized. Yang Luoqi said. She blinked her big eyes in a daze. Seeing that her friends had expressed their opinions, she also said, I also forgive Lu Weisha, but I don't blame Lu Weisha. It's not that. Something seemed wrong. Okay, we're still good friends. Nan Zhaoyu took the initiative to come over, took Lu Weisha's soft hand, shook it, and laughed. Lu Weisha was still a little confused as to why her friends were suddenly angry and relieved. Now only Lan Xian hadn't expressed her opinion. But this little girl seemed to have forgotten what she had said before. She even said to Mr. Mu with interest, Teacher, I've also been to Australia before. I've been there with my dad. We've even eaten kangaroo meat, but it's not good. It's sour. I don't like it. Boss Lan had probably brought her daughter to try kangaroo meat out of curiosity back then. When Shishi heard this, she stared at her friend with wide eyes in surprise. She said, Little kangaroos are so cute. How can you eat kangaroos? It's not good. It's not as good as beef. Lan Xian said. Xian let's not eat kangaroos in the future, okay? Shishi was still a little obsessed. It wasn't because it was cute. Piglets were very cute, but Shishi would still eat pork. Perhaps in her subconscious mind, a kangaroo carrying a baby in a pouch was not much different from a human. The two little girls chattered away, and when Mr. Mu saw that the children had reconciled, she quietly let out a sigh of relief. She also left some time for the children to interact. What's a kangaroo? Yang Luoqi asked curiously. From the very beginning of the conflict, the word kangaroo had been repeatedly brought up. The children who didn't know were now filled with curiosity. Chen Shiyun, Nan Zhaoyu, and even Lu Weisha were all looking curiously at Shishi and Lan Xian. Yes, Lu Weisha still didn't know what a dumb tree was. Kangaroos walk standing up. Their fists are like this, and then there will be babies here. But only the kangaroo mom will have babies. Shishi explained excitedly to her friends as she mimicked the kangaroo's appearance. It could be said that it was very vivid. Lu Weisha understood at a glance. She said happily, I know. Kangaroo. Yes. I'll bring Lu Weisha's photo to you tomorrow. You haven't seen it before. Shishi giggled and said. The little girl felt that such a happy thing should be shared with her friends. That's the best. Mr. Mu guided them with a smile. You can share it with each other. Then you don't have to care about it, right? Lu Weisha saw that everyone was happy, and she was also happy. She tried to say, Tomorrow, I'll bring candy for you, okay? Dad and I bought it there. It's super delicious. After playing with Shishi and the others for a long time, some of the catchphrases were infected. Yeah, there's delicious food. Lan Xian jumped up excitedly. The other children also jumped up excitedly with Lan Xian. The children's bell-like laughter, angelic smiles, and simple happiness were really the most beautiful things in the world. Chapter 684. The children's solution to the problem was very simple, and it saved the adults a headache. When Shishi came back, she casually told Yang Yi about it. After that, Yang Yi also helped her solve her worries. He helped Cici scan the photo that Lu Weisha had sent to her on the computer. He adjusted the color and contrast, and then printed it out with the photo printer. Although the color was slightly dimmer, and the graininess was more obvious than the original photo, after the molding, the glossy feeling was not too far off. You can share these photos with everyone. Tell them that Daddy helped you copy them. That way, everyone can have photos. Yang Yi smiled and patted his daughter's head. Yang Yi did this because he was worried that the other children would be envious, and Shishi would be reluctant to give her photos away. Oh, and you have to get an address for them. When we go to Australia, you'll be responsible for sending letters to everyone. Yang Yi also gave Shishi a small task to cultivate her sense of responsibility. The next day, Shishi happily brought the printed photos to kindergarten, while Yang Yi went back to pick up Murphy and Chen. Together, they went to the studio to receive Chen Yijie and the people from Tianxiang. Of course, the old man, Hu Songnan, was also there. After not seeing him for 2 years, the old man had aged a lot. He even needed his son Hu Yongxiang to support him when he walked. When he first met the old man was still wearing a suit and was still a handsome old man. Although Yang Yi knew that it was because he had lost a lot of energy from the fall last year, he was still old after all. Yang Yi couldn't help but feel a little sad when he saw the merciless nature of the years. Yang Yi didn't care about life and death in the past, but now, it was like a cultivator entering the world. He was tainted with the aura of the mortal world. And now he was a little sentimental. Moreover, Hu Songnan was both a teacher and a friend to him. Looking at his hunched back, Yang Yi's emotions inevitably fluctuated. Yang Yi walked up and held Hu Songnan's hand while helping Hu Yongxiang to support the old man. There were so many things that he wanted to say, but only one simple sentence came out of his mouth. "Grandpa Hu, welcome back. Little Yang, this might be the last time I come back." Hu Songnan was still in good spirits. He gently patted the back of Yang Yi's hand, smiled kindly and said, "My old bones can't stand the torment for a long time." "How could that be? Your body is still healthy. If you have time, come back and play," Yang Yi said with a smile. Of course, this was what he said to comfort old Master Hu. To be honest, old Master Hu was younger than Yang Chongguei, but he didn't have Yang Chongguei's body after all. Regardless of whether it was Hu Songnan or Yang Chongguei, birth, old age, illness, or death was an eternal cycle in the world. Yang Yi didn't dare to think too much about it. "Little Yang, I haven't seen you for 2 years and you've become so glib." Hu Songnan pointed his finger at Yang Yi and said with a smile. Yang Yi stepped aside and introduced Murphy to Hu Songnan. "Grandpa Hu, this is Murphy. She didn't come. She went to kindergarten. I'll introduce her to you later. Then this is Momo." Of course, Yang Yi still told old Master Hu that he gave birth to a son at the end of the year. Of course, Hu Songnan knew about it, but this was the first time they met. "Grandpa Hu, hello." Murphy held Momo and respectfully greeted Hu Songnan. Whether he was Yang Yi's elder or not, Hu Songnan was also a university professor with deep attainments in classical music. Young people might not have heard of him, but Murphy had heard of Hu Songnan's songs before. Such an elder was naturally worthy of respect. "I know. I've read the newspaper. Little Mo is also a big singer. I like your songs very much. I'm also your fan." Although Hu Songnan was old, his mentality was still as good as before. His somewhat humorous tone dispelled Murphy's nervousness. "Ah, don't say that. I'm your fan. I've heard of your works," Murphy said hurriedly. In fact, Hu Songnan's attention wasn't on Murphy. When he saw Tong Tong in the swaddling clothes, he couldn't take his eyes off her. Old people still like children. Hu Songnan loved his grandson, granddaughter, and now the baby in front of him. The younger they were, the more he liked them. "Momo, Grandpa is here to see you." Seeing this, Mo Fei picked up little Momo, gently pulled up his little hand, shook it, and said softly. Little Momo looked around curiously, and also glanced at the old grandpa in front of him. However, his interest was not strong and he was very unfamiliar. This was not the grandpa he was familiar with. He called out, "Yeah," twice, not knowing what he wanted to express. "I'm sorry. He was just born, so he can't speak yet," Murphy said to Hu Songnan. "It's fine. Hee, I'm just looking at the baby. He's so cute." Hu Songnan couldn't stop smiling. However, although Murphy respected the old man, she didn't want to let Hu Songnan carry her son. The old man was old, and she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to hold him steadily. Hu Songnan also didn't have this intention. He smiled and patted Yang Yi's hand. "All right, you don't have to worry about me. I'll play with the baby. Xiang has something to discuss with you. You young people can go and talk about it." Hu Yongxiang obviously didn't come to Jiangqing for a vacation. He left his secretary Yi Xiaofeng to accompany Hu Songnan. Then he brought Chen Yi, Jie Mao Su, and the others to follow Yang Yi to the meeting room. After some discussion, Yang Yi finally understood the purpose of their visit. To be precise, the main purpose of their visit wasn't Yang Yi or anyone else, but the Chinese record market in the mainland. Now that the economy in mainland China is developing rapidly, the record market is also a big cake that no one can ignore. In addition, the Cantonese record market in Harbor City is not doing well, and it's getting more and more sluggish year by year. Tianxiang is also looking for change and wants Eason to develop in mainland China. In the afternoon, after Yang Yi sent the guests away, he told Mo Fei about what they had discussed. Old Master Hu didn't plan to return to the small building. Moreover, Hu Yongxiang also felt that it was better to rest in the hotel. He would accompany Old Master Hu back tomorrow. Therefore, after the discussion, the group of people went back to the hotel where they were staying in a grandiose manner. After hearing Yang Yi's words, Murphy couldn't help but sigh softly. Yes, Harbor City isn't as good as the mainland. After I came back, I saw that many artists from Harbor City came to the mainland. However, more of them are shooting movies, and less of them are in the music industry. Harbor City's music industry is too closed, and very few people are willing to communicate with us. Actually, Tianxiang told me that a few years ago, the few powerful record companies in Harbor City were making preparations. Just like Tianxiang, Eason used to sing Cantonese songs, but in recent years, they've started to include Chinese songs in their records. They're trying to test the reaction of the mainland market. Yang Yi smiled softly and said, perhaps not only Eason, but you will also see many singers from Harbor City coming to the mainland to develop in the next few years. Murphy didn't feel that this was a threat. Instead, she sighed and said, when I came to the mainland from Harbor City to develop in the past, everyone looked down on me and thought that the mainland was poor and backward. I didn't expect their views to change now. Of course, the population base is here. However, Harbor City isn't backward yet. Many people are still trying to settle down in Harbor City. Yang Yi smiled. I don't want to. I like Jiangcheng. I like living in Jiangcheng with you. Murphy shook her head and said, I like Jiangcheng too. When we are free, let's go out and have fun. We will see the world. Then, our home will always be here. Yang Yi smiled. Then why are they looking for you? Murphy still didn't understand. First, they are here to pay a visit. After all, they want to open a branch in Jiangcheng. To be precise, it is an office. No matter what, they want to maintain a good relationship with us and reduce misunderstandings. Yang Yi smiled. Tianxiang didn't open a branch in Shanghai or Beijing. Instead, they chose to open a branch in Jiangcheng to avoid direct conflicts with big companies in the early stages. Second, they also want me to write a few good songs for Chen Yijie. Chen Yijie's first Chinese record in the mainland. They want to achieve results. Chapter 685. Chen Yijie asked Yang Yi for a song, and Yang Yi naturally wouldn't refuse. What made Yang Yi sigh was the current situation of Harbor City's music scene. Although there were still good songs emerging every year, it was no longer as prosperous as before. Just like Yang Yi's previous life, Harbor City was the entertainment center of Asia. Tianxiang hopes to maintain cooperation with us and strengthen our relationship, Yang Yi said. In exchange, they will also give us the support we want in Harbor City. Murphy asked with some doubts, Harbor City? Do we still have business in Harbor City? Yang Yi smiled and said, I thought so too, but I suddenly remembered that you left Harbor City before. Don't you want to go back one day with your honor in the mainland and prove yourself in Harbor City's Cantonese music market? Murphy was stunned. Don't you want to take back the championship you lost in the past? Yang Yi smiled and said, Harbor City's music market is very closed. If we want to go back, it won't be easy. Don't make it sound so bad. What do you mean by go back? Murphy said angrily. Yang Yi smiled and continued to drive, waiting for Murphy's response. Honor, championship, these things are already very indifferent to me. Murphy was no longer a teenage girl. She pondered for a moment and smiled. But if you want to sing Cantonese songs, I'm very interested. Sing Cantonese songs, that's not a problem. Yang Yi snapped his fingers. Others thought that Harbor City's music scene was close to a stagnant pool, but Yang Yi felt that it might be fun to stir it up at this time. Note: you don't have to go to Harbor City to sing Cantonese songs. Don't misunderstand. It was already spring, and Jiangcheng was still cold after entering spring. However, the willow trees by the Grand Canal had sprouted new buds, and some swallows were chirping in the surrounding trees, as if announcing the arrival of spring. As far as the eye could see, it was full of vitality. However, human life was not like the cycle of spring, summer, autumn, and winter. Returning in the most beautiful spring, this white-haired old man's eyes were only filled with deep longing and attachment. Accompanied by Yang Yi, Hu Songnen walked around the small building. His hand, which was full of wrinkles and spots like old tree bark, gently stroked the handrail of the stairs, the window of the balcony, and the old desk. Although many of the furniture did not match the ones in his memory, Yang Yi had also added a lot of things, and Hu Songnen could still see some of the shadows of the past in Yang Yi. Finally they went downstairs to the coffee shop and sat down. "Grandpa Hu, do you think I've changed too much?" Yang Yi said apologetically as he pointed at the wallpaper and the chairs in the coffee shop. Although they were all nostalgic and natural, they were completely different from the previous bookstores. "It's okay. I'm already mentally prepared to give you the house." Hu Songnen smiled and pointed at the shelves with records and books. "I'm surprised that you can keep these. After all, you have a business to run." "How is that a business? I can't make much money. I opened this coffee shop because I like the atmosphere here." Yang Yi smiled as he stood up. The female student who worked part-time in the coffee shop came over with a pot of coffee and a pot of tea. Yang Yi took the plates from her and said, "Little Fong, I'll take care of this. You can go do other customers." Sugar Cube was the name of the female student. She came from a small city and came from an ordinary family. She wanted to work to earn some pocket money. Previously, because Ding Xiang was going to accompany Guizi to Shanghai, and Yang Huan was gradually getting busy, Yang Yi asked Ding Xiang to recruit 2 female university students to help. Sugar Cube was one of them. One of the reasons why she was chosen was because of her interesting name. "Grandpa Hu, President Hu, what would you like to drink?" Yang Yi asked with a smile as he held 2 pots. "Coffee. Or tea?" In order to lose weight, Murphy insisted on drinking tea. Every time Yang Yi came over, he had to ask the staff to prepare 2 sets of coffee. "I drink tea and he drinks coffee. Your coffee smells good. If I wasn't worried that my body wouldn't be able to take it, I would try it," Hu Songnan said with a smile. There were many benefits to drinking coffee, but there were also many drawbacks for the elderly who were in poor health. For example, the stimulation of caffeine could cause arrhythmia, or increase blood pressure to cause high blood pressure. Even if it wasn't that serious, drinking coffee would still affect sleep. "You can't drink it." Hu Yongxiang didn't let Hu Songnen touch the coffee, but he liked it very much. When he smelled it, his eyes lit up and he said, "Is this Blue Mountain coffee?" "Authentic Blue Mountain coffee." Yang Yi chuckled and said, "These beans were hard to find. I asked my friend to buy them for me." Cece was sitting between her father and mother. She was drinking fruit juice that she had bought outside. The little girl was looking at the old man opposite her with her bright eyes. It seemed that one could see the curiosity in her eyes. She was as curious as Tong Tong. Of course, she observed more carefully. She felt that this old man looked very strange. His eyes were sunken, the wrinkles on his face were deeper, and his mouth was drier. "Hello, Shishi." Hu Songnen noticed the little girl's gaze. He trembled as he put down the cup of tea and greeted Shishi with a smile. In fact, they had already introduced each other. It's not polite to stare at others. Yang Yi rubbed his daughter's little head and laughed. "Is he the owner of this house, Grandpa?" Shishi finally couldn't hold back her curiosity. She raised her head and asked her father. "Yes." "You have to say thank you, Grandpa Hu, for letting me live in your house," Yang Yi instructed. "We have to learn to be grateful. Otherwise, when Dad was poor, we would have to live in a very, very small house." Shishi nodded in confusion. However, she obediently followed her father's instructions. After thanking him, she didn't wait for Hu Songnan's reply and said nervously, But Grandpa, who don't you want the house? Can't we live in it? The little girl didn't know how to express the words take back the house. You can't say that. Yang Yi couldn't stop her in time and said reproachfully, we don't live here now. This is Grandpa's house. But I like this house. She pouted and said with grievance. It's okay. I came back this time to talk about this. Hu Songnan stopped Yang Yi and didn't let him talk about Shi. Grandpa Hu smiled and said to Shi, don't worry. From now on, this house is yours. You can live here for as long as you want. Yang Yi and Murphy were stunned. What did he mean? Hu Songnan asked Hu Yongxiang to take out a title deed. He gently stroked the yellowed title deed, as if he was reluctant to part with it. However, Grandpa Hu didn't delay. He slowly said to Yang Yi, actually, I didn't intend to take back this house when I left it to you. However, I'm still a little worried. I'm worried that you're not a good person to take over. It turned out that when Grandpa Hu said that he would rent the house to Yang Yi for 1 yuan, he was holding back a little. In the past 2 years, although Grandpa Hu wasn't in Jiangqing and didn't see what Xiaolu looked like, he had been paying attention to Yang Yi and knew about his development. He was also gratified that he chose the right person. But you don't have to give this house to me. This is your most precious memory. How can I take it away? Yang Yi said anxiously. I can help you take care of it. If you want to come back again. Xiaoyang, I appreciate your kindness. However, what I said yesterday was also the details. Grandpa is old. This time, I'm coming back for the last time. Hu Songnan's tone was kind and firm. But memory is placed in the mind and heart. It's not placed on the house. Hu Songnan said with emotion. Moreover, I have no regrets because I'm also waiting for the time when I can meet her again. Yang Yi was still okay, but Murphy was moved to tears when she heard these words. Everyone wanted their love to last forever, but in the end, they couldn't escape the ruthlessness of time. It was said that one's hair could turn white, but they couldn't stay old. Murphy thought of herself and Yang Yi from Grandpa Hu. She didn't dare to think about what would happen decades later, but she felt so sad that she wanted to cry. Don't treat this as a parting of life and death. My dad is still fine. When you go to Harbor City in the future, you can also visit him at our house. Hu Yongxiang took out the transfer agreement, smiled and said, sign it, Yang Yi. This is my dad's kindness. Worried that Yang Yi would ask for money, Hu Yongxiang waved his hand and smiled. You don't have to say anything else. You and I don't lack money. Am I right, Mr. Yang? Others didn't know, but Hu Yongxiang, who had cooperated with Sahara Online Mall, knew some of Yang Yi's details. If he continued to refuse, he would be hypocritical. Yang Yi pondered for a moment, took the pen, and signed his name. This guitar, you can keep it too. Hu Songnan watched Yang Yi sign the transfer agreement, then handed over the brown beetle guitar that Yang Yi brought over, and left for Yang Yi. He said gently, can you sing Long Time No See for me again? It was as if he had traveled back in time and returned to 2 years ago. Yang Yi touched the guitar, and his heart was filled with emotion. However, the promise stopped at the tip of his tongue. He thought of a song that was a masterpiece in his heart. Grandpa Hu, can I sing you another song? Yang Yi said softly. Chapter 686. This magical song came from a magical comedy movie. Sitting in the booth, Yang Yi couldn't fully express himself, so he picked up his guitar and stood up. The others followed behind him. In the middle of the coffee shop, Yang Yi sat on a small stool in front of the piano. Because Qianli Chuanshu often came to the shop to perform, there were 2 microphones installed. It just so happened that Sugar Cube could come over and help Yang Yi adjust. She pointed one of the microphones at the guitar and the other at Yang Yi's mouth. Is he going to perform? There were a few student customers in the coffee shop, 2 couples and 3 singles. When they saw this scene, they looked over curiously. The coffee shop on this street corner often had performances. They didn't expect to see one. Of course, not everyone could recognize Yang Yi, who had always kept a low profile. However, a girl from the Classical Music Academy looked strangely at Hu Songnan, who was being supported by Hu Yongxiang. She whispered to her boyfriend, That old man looks very familiar. I think I've seen him somewhere before. Of course, she had seen him before. In the Academy building, there were photos of him and his past performances in various countries. However, old man who didn't look that old in the photo. Dad, why don't you sit down? Hu Yongxiang asked with concern. No need, I'll stand and listen. Xiaoyang always surprises me. Hu Songnan said happily. Yang Yi adjusted himself and began his performance. Without any nonsense, his thick and long fingers gently stroked the guitar. A string of exotic prelude flowed out like a stream in the mountains. The transition of the prelude slowed down a little, and Yang Yi began to sing. The past is now the past, never to come again. Including Mo Fei, who was looking forward to it, everyone was stunned. This song? A Cantonese song? Of course, it wasn't strange that Yang Yi could write and sing Cantonese songs. It was just that in the past, he was the one who wrote them for Chen Yijie. He had never sung them before. Now that they heard him suddenly sing a Cantonese song, and sing it with perfect pronunciation, and without any flaws in his accent, everyone felt a little strange. Murphy was fine, she knew Yang Yi's ability. She was more interested in Yang Yi's singing. Unlike the smoothness of his usual pop songs, Yang Yi's voice now seemed to have a sense of vicissitudes. He also deliberately used obvious pauses to set off the cruelty of time. However, this was only because Murphy was more familiar with Yang Yi that she could tell that he was deliberately singing. The other customers in the coffee shop couldn't help but be mesmerized by Yang Yi's strong and mature male voice. It was as if Yang Yi was supposed to sing like this. The song was very lonely, but the lyrics were even more sad. Hu Songnan was stunned when he heard Yang Yi's first sentence. The past, the present after the past can never come back. These lyrics, were they talking about himself? In the past, it was about his old wife who had passed away. Now it was about him who had grown old, right? The red leaves are buried in the dust. Such lyrics, like a gust of wind, blew open the old man's deeply buried memories. His sunken eyes, cloudy eyes, began to fill with tears. Hu Yongxiang was also filled with emotions. Of course, he was in a high position and had more self-control. He also knew how much such a sad song affected people's emotions. He persuaded again, Dad, let's sit down and listen to it. Don't be noisy. Many years ago, when Hu Yongxiang was still young, he disturbed Hu Songnan's research. The old man impatiently scolded him. In front of music, the old man seemed to be a different person. He was picky and strict. Murphy noticed it. She looked around and patted Xishi's shoulder. She whispered, Xishi, go over there and get a stool for Grandpa to sit on. It was a red plastic stool with high legs. They didn't have it originally, but sometimes, 1,000 Miles Chuanshu and the others would use it for performances. So they got two. Most of the time, they would put it away. It was very annoying. This kind of stool was very light. Shishi had no problem picking it up. The little girl didn't understand what her father was singing. She obediently trotted over and brought over a stool. However, it wasn't one but two stacked stools. Although they weren't heavy, the stool was very tall. Shishi raised her hands high and lifted them up. Her little face revealed a strained expression. Grandpa, take a seat. Shishi walked to Hu Songnan's side and said in a clear voice. Hu Songnan was still a little annoyed. Who was disturbing him again? However, when he saw the little girl with her little head raised and her big eyes filled with anticipation, waiting for his praise, the old man's temper disappeared. Good child. Thank you. The old man sat down with a smile. He didn't know that the stool under his but was actually two stacked stools. Hu Yongxiang could only stand aside helplessly. You're welcome. Shishi ran back to her mother's side with satisfaction. At this time, Yang Yi was still singing. Lovers will never come again after parting. Sitting alone without words, I look beyond the world. The lyrics weren't just written about sadness. In fact, there was a kind of carefree but heavy attitude that couldn't be let go. Just like the accompaniment of the guitar, the rhythm was as light as a dance music. The light and slow fingering brought about a strong exotic flavor. However, at the same time, this kind of melody still hid a faint sadness. It made one's heart feel as if it was suppressed and difficult to let go. Although the flowers will wither, they will bloom again. The love of a lifetime is hidden beyond the clouds. Hearing this sentence, the young people might not feel anything, but the sadness in Hu Songnan's heart was like a field in spring that was turned over by plowing. The beauty of this line and the classic poem, "Flowers will bloom again, but people will never be young again," had the same wonderful effect. Yes, the flowers will wither, but they will bloom again. The love of a lifetime will leave, but they will never come back. Yang Yi was still imitating the original singer's tone as he sang the climax. The sea of bitterness, turning over, brings about love and hate. Especially the word turning over. He sang about the different flavors of life. In this world, it's hard to escape fate. Blind dates are unapproachable. Perhaps I should believe that it's fate. The song faintly finished, and Hu Songnan's eyes were already brimming with tears. Hu Yongxiang looked at his old father's emotional appearance, and was a little worried that this intense emotion would cause a big problem. Murphy also understood the song. She, who had a strong passion for music, was deeply immersed in the emotions expressed in the song. Although she knew that Yang Yi was singing the story of grandfather Hu and his grandmother, she still couldn't help but be moved. Her heart was heavy, and her tears fell down. Everyone had a different feeling when listening to this song. Like the other customers in the coffee shop, most of them were confused and couldn't understand the meaning of the lyrics. What do you think of this song? The classical music schoolgirl's boyfriend asked his girlfriend. I think it sounds strange. I don't understand Cantonese songs either, but that person sang really well. It's very retro, very unique singing style. And the melody is very nice. The girl's focus was on this. Not to mention them, even after Yang Yi finished singing, he didn't move. He was waiting. Hu Songnan was evoked a lot of memories and emotions by this song. After a while he slowly came back to his senses. After all, the old man was a person who had experienced many hardships. Although his heart was still a little sad, he didn't indulge in it anymore. Instead, he slowly pulled himself back. The old man wiped away his tears and said with a smile, I've let you see a joke. Little Yang, this song of yours, it made me think of her again. When a person is old, it's easy to get emotional when listening to songs. Yang Yi swept the guitar strings and asked, Grandpa Hu, how about I sing Long Time No See for you again? No need, the song just now is enough. We agreed that I only need to think of her once a day. I'll save it for when I find her in the future. Hu Songnan adjusted his mentality very well, and even joked. Hu Yongxiang curiously asked, Little Yang, is this your new song? What's the name? Yang Yi smiled slightly. Love of a Lifetime. That you're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.